Chapter 976. Sure, Lin Sun agreed without hesitation. Shun Baixian was stunned. He didn't expect Lin Sun to agree so readily. Then he raised his eyebrows and said, "Since it's a duel, it's natural to compete in martial arts. Apart from that, you can't use holy weapons." "Okay." Lin Sun nodded again. Shun Baixian was relieved. His eyes flashed like lightning, and his body exuded a golden brilliance. His fighting spirit surged. "Then you have to be careful. Remember, although I won't kill you, I won't show mercy," Lin Sun said, "just like when you fought with Xia Ji last time." Shun Baishuan's lips twitched fiercely. He was furious. Lin Sun was exposing him in public. "Of course," he shouted and rushed out, stepping on the void. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and he looked like a god of war, arrogant and disdainful. "Come and fight." Lin Sun smiled brightly. "As you wish." Swish! His clothes fluttered, and his whole body overflowed like a stream of light. His palms and fingers formed a seal, and he knocked on Shun Baixian across the air. Boom! The battle broke out in an instant. In the void, wind and thunder surged, and the divine light rumbled. The battle situation was astonishing. Boom! Lin Sun stepped forward and performed the method of refining the Star River by fire. A sea of fire spread out and surged in the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The stars in it burned like blazing suns exploding, producing an aura that could destroy the world. Ostentatious, wanton, domineering, like a god of fire. Everyone present was moved, especially Miss Lu and Loka, who were keenly aware that Lin Sun's combat effectiveness was obviously much stronger than before. However, Shun Baixian was not bad. Although this devil incarnate from a family of saints was arrogant and conceited, he had the capital to be conceited. His body was surrounded by golden divine light, and he performed an ancient fist force. His fist force was like an angry dragon sweeping through the sky, extremely fierce and overbearing. "Good." Lin Sun laughed and fought fiercely with him. He seemed to be enjoying himself to his heart's content. He was worried that he couldn't find an opponent to hone his newly transformed power of the Great Way. Coincidentally, Shun Baixian took the initiative to come to him, which was exactly what Lin Sun wanted. Just like at this moment, he was acutely aware that after the advancement of the power of the Grand Tao of Fire, the might that erupted from the fiery refinement Star River could simply be described as shocking. With a single strike, a sea of flames covered the sky and a river of stars burned. The terrifying destructive power was enough to refine a part of the world. "Oomph." Shun Baixian snorted coldly. Although he was surprised by Lin Sun's strength, he didn't panic. He used his ancestral Taoist arts to fight head-on. Moreover, he was even more domineering than Lin Sun, and he'd never dodged from the beginning until the end. His fists were extremely powerful and overbearing, and they even blasted apart the void and caused turbulence to sweep out. But soon, he was furious because Lin Sun scolded him with slight dissatisfaction in the fierce battle. "Use more strength." This was Lin Sun's original words, and he said it with a frown. "You little brat, you really are arrogant." Shun Baixian had always prided himself on being the devil incarnate, but now that he was being provoked like this, he exploded. He roared furiously, his entire body releasing endless golden radiance. He brandished the halberd without the slightest hesitation, hacking out in all directions. He was ferocious like an ancient overlord. Now, this is interesting. Lin Sun wasn't shocked, but rather delighted. "You're looking for a beating." Shun Baixian gritted his teeth and waved the halberd, splashing out tens of thousands of layers of golden radiance, and even the void rumbled and exploded. He was determined to return the humiliation Xia's solstice had brought him to Lin Sun, and he wanted Lin Sun to taste the feeling of unbearable pain, despair, and grievance. But it wasn't long before Lin Sun was dissatisfied again, and he said, "The dignified devil incarnate of the Shun clan only has this little ability? You." Shun Baixian roared angrily, and he almost bit his teeth into pieces. He couldn't restrain himself any longer, and he used his trump card. Rumble. His golden halberd actually emanated circle after circle of golden ripples of the Tao, and it caused the nearby space to collapse and sink. It seemed like it was showing signs of great destruction. This was the Shun clan's ancestral secret art. Golden Vortex True Energy. It could pierce through the sky and kill ghosts and gods, and it was extremely domineering and fierce. Seeing this, the aura around Lin Sun's body suddenly changed, and it became quiet like an abyss, and his whole body emitted terrifying fluctuations that seemed capable of devouring the heavens and destroying the earth. This was the way of devouring star obliteration, which had reached the level of Tao. At this time, this power was mixed into 9 strikes for shaking heaven and 9 changes of Calamity Dragon by Lin Sun. In an instant, his combat power also changed accordingly. When he punched out, the nearby void seemed to be directly swallowed up, and the attack from Shun Baixian was completely annihilated, disappearing without a trace. This was too strange. Everyone saw that Shun Baixian's golden vortex true energy was like a golden dragon soaring in the sky, with the power to destroy the heavens and destroy the earth. But before it could get close, it was swallowed up by Lin Sun's fist energy and annihilated without a trace. Then, Lin Sun's fist energy burst out, just like a great abyss of hell opening its mouth to devour the heavens. With a bang, Shun Baixian's whole body was submerged in the fist energy. Bang! However, Shun Baixian's reputation was not undeserved. His spear burst into bright and blazing light, crushing the power that suppressed his whole body, and he escaped unharmed. It was just that he was a little embarrassed, and his clothes were torn. What kind of power was this? Shun Baixian realized the power, and his face changed slightly. At the same time, Miss Lu and Loco were also shocked, sensing the terrifying power of the Great Way that Lin Sun displayed. The Great Way is like a great abyss, unfathomable, and like a black hole that can swallow everything. What kind of Great Way is this? Loco was stunned, and her clear eyes were full of surprise. Why do I feel that it's a little familiar, as if I've heard of it somewhere? Miss Lu murmured, frowning. After a long time, she suddenly said, I remember. It's Yun Qingbai, the top swordsman in the ancient Desolation territory. There was a trace of shock in her voice, and she seemed to have lost her composure. Yun Qingbai. Miss Li's clear eyes also narrowed. Yun Qingbai's swordsmanship is like an abyss, and it has the infinite power to kill ghosts and gods, devour the universe. And its killing power is shocking, Miss Li said. Rumor has it that he has mastered a mysterious and rare power of the Great Way. This kind of power is enough to rank in the top 10 of the Supreme Tao list. You mean that Lin Sun has also mastered this kind of power of the Great Way? Locus suddenly remembered that this was the power of the Great Way that Lin Sun had comprehended in the steel forest of Azure Parasol Mountain. At that time, it was regarded as an extremely ordinary whirlpool Great Way, and it caused a lot of ridicule. But now it seemed that it was definitely not the case. No, I just feel that it's a little similar, but I'm not sure if it's the same source. Miss Li shook her head. Although she said so, her expression was quite complicated, as if she was shocked and in disbelief. In the fierce battle in the void, Shun Baixian was completely suppressed, and he couldn't even raise his head. This caused him to be both shocked and furious. He'd similarly stepped foot onto the peak of the world, possessed various peerless secret techniques, and possessed extraordinary natural talent. He felt that amongst the younger generation, only a small group of heaven-defying geniuses in the St. Hyde grounds could pose a threat to him. The others were not worth fearing. But who would have thought that he would be suppressed by Xie Ji a few days ago? And now he was being suppressed by Lin Sun. How could he not be shocked? Can you do it or not? Show me all your trump cards. Lin Sun expressed his dissatisfaction on the opposite side. This made Shun Baixian so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. He had used many secret methods and trump cards, but they were resolved again and again. How could he have any trump cards left? Unless he used a holy treasure. But if he did that, it would be equivalent to slapping his own face, and he couldn't afford to lose face. Boom! In the end, Shun Baixian was defeated by Lin Sun, and blood sprayed from his mouth and nose. He had a backbone, and he gritted his teeth and refused to admit defeat. He still fought with Lin Sun fiercely. But after being defeated again and again, there was no hope for him to turn the tables. He was directly suppressed by Lin Sun from the void, and with a bang, he fell on the treasure ship. In the void, Lin Sun wanted to continue, but he was stopped by Loka. Don't fight anymore. The winner has been decided. If you continue, it will be a matter of life and death. Loka felt a headache coming on. I don't accept this. Shun Baishuan's face was livid, and he shouted angrily. However, he didn't take any further action. He was purely venting the grievance and anger in his heart. You have ambition. As the saying goes, know shame and then be brave. I hope you have the ability to come and fight with me again. I promise to accompany you to the end. Lin Sun walked over with a smile. Sir, Ko Xing said, I never would have guessed that you would be so powerful. We misunderstood you earlier and would like to apologize to you. I hope that you, a person of great stature, will be able to forgive us for our transgressions. They had all seen the previous battle, and they suddenly realized that the guy they thought to be simple-minded was actually a top powerhouse. But when he heard their apology, Shun Baixian was so angry that he trembled all over. Hateful, really hateful. I have been defeated like this. What the hell is there to apologize for? Is there any use? In the end, Shun Baixian left with Loka, full of shame. Before leaving, he resolutely said that he would definitely come back to fight with Lin Sun again to wash away his shame. Lin Sun expressed a strong welcome to this and kindly exhorted him to work hard and never slack off after he went back. Shun Baixian wanted to say thank you, but when he learned that these words came from Lin Sun, he was so angry that his nose almost fell off. Was Lin Sun showing off? A kind and amiable attitude, as if taking care of the loser. This was clearly full of malicious mockery. Loka and Shun Baixian left together, and Lin Sun and the others didn't delay and continued on their way to the depths of the border river. Along the way, although there were many dangers, they didn't encounter any fatal dangers. Time went by, and before they knew it, 7 days had passed. In these 7 days, in addition to cultivation, Lin Sun also comprehended and figured out the mysteries of the first part of the Dharma scripture, which was very fulfilling. The only thing that puzzled him was that after so many days, little Silver, who was suppressed in the sea of consciousness, showed no sign of yielding and admitting his mistakes. He seemed extremely stubborn. Little Silver was the soul-devouring insect that had transformed into a larva king. Since being deceived by Lin Sun, it was very angry and felt that its self-esteem had been damaged, and it didn't want to pay attention to Lin Sun, its black-hearted and unscrupulous master. Lin Sun also felt a little headache about this. He was considering whether to find another time to have a good talk with Little Silver. Chapter 977. The Random Star Beach was a famous relic of an ancient battlefield in the Boundary River. It was said that in ancient times, there was an earth-shattering battle here. A saint of swordsmanship appeared here, and with just one sword, he cut down all the stars in the sky. The stars exploded and turned into meteorites falling down, smashing out huge abyss-like pits within a radius of tens of thousands of miles. When the Boundary River appeared, this area experienced countless changes over the years and became today's Random Star Beach. Look, that's the Random Star Beach in the distance. For many cultivators in the Dongsheng territory, the Random Star Beach is a treasure land. There are real star remains meteorites in it, and there are many of them. In the past countless years, no one knows how many cultivators have come to explore and excavate. On the deck of the treasure ship, Ko Xing pointed to the distance with a relaxed expression and spoke frankly with assurance. After arriving at the Random Star Beach, it was equivalent to entering the territory of the Dongxing territory. In less than half a day, they would arrive at the nearest city to the Boundary River. In the distance, the turbid waves of the Boundary River were rolling, and clouds and mist filled the air. But unlike other areas, there were reef-like lands here. They were full of potholes, and the river flowed into them, looking like a beach. It covered an extremely large area. Some reefs were only more than 30 meters wide, while some reefs were no different from islands and were dozens of miles in size. This rumor isn't false. During the ancient times, that saint of the sword Tao was extremely famous, and he was titled the demon-vanquishing sword saint. He once went on an expedition here, and he used all his combat strength to slash down the stars in the sky with a single strike of his sword. The shattered remains of the stars fell here forever, and it formed the spectacle before us. Miss Le said she was extraordinarily intelligent and knew many ancient secrets, making people wonder if there was anything in this world that she didn't know. Demon-vanquishing sword saint? Lin Sun sighed inwardly. This title was really amazing. What kind of treasure are the star remains meteorites? Lin Sun couldn't help asking. It's similar to Source Sealing Spirit Stone. After cutting it open, there's a great chance to cut out rare and precious treasures, such as spiritual materials, spiritual herbs, ores, precious jade, and so on. Misla was very familiar with them, and some rare ones can even cut out incredible treasures, such as divine materials, spiritual treasures, and spiritual embryos. Spiritual embryo? Lin Sun was surprised. Yes, around 10 years ago, an elder at the half-step monarch realm of the heavenly pivot divine grounds of the East Victory domain had once obtained a strange meteorite in the chaotic star shoal. After he cut it open, he discovered that a rare lazarite beast spirit embryo was being nurtured within it. It hadn't even awakened its spiritual sense, yet it already possessed cultivation, and it could be said to be miraculous. Miss Lu said, "It seems like such a thing has happened more than once in the past. I heard that someone even cut out a mysterious beast bone from a meteorite. It was branded with a peerless cultivation technique." Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be amazed. The world was so big that nothing was too strange. When Miss La mentioned the heavens' pivot holy ground, Lin Sun couldn't help but recall some past events. When he was in Xiao Empire, he had heard that most of the top students of Green Deer Academy were sent to the heavens' pivot holy land to cultivate. The one who left the deepest impression on Lin Sun was Gu Yunting, who possessed the talent of Tao, Fire Golden Body. He was extremely famous in Green Deer Academy. However, Lin Sun didn't like this guy at all. At that time, Gu Yunting was arrogant and wanted to take it away from Lin Sun for the horn of the one-legged ox, which led to conflict. Although they didn't fight in the end, the conflict was formed. In addition to Gu Yunting, many people from Green Deer Academy also entered the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land to cultivate, such as Zui Yujing of the Zhua clan, Zhao Jingwen of the Imperial family, and so on. Speaking of which, for some reason, Lin Sun had taught some descendants of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land a lesson. Because of this, he was hated by the descendants of the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land. Where's the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land? Lin Sun asked. It's on the other side of the Boundary River, in the territory of the ancient Song province. It's an ancient orthodoxy that is extremely famous in the East Victory domain. Answered Koxing. Lin Sun nodded and didn't say anything more. As they talked, they were already near the chaotic star shoal. Reefs were scattered all over the place. As far as the eye could see, they couldn't see the end. The gray mist was faintly discernible in the void. Occasionally, there was a flash of firefly-like starlight, which covered this area with a mysterious color. When Lin Sun's treasure ship approached, he could see at a glance that many figures of practitioners were scattered in different areas, either in groups of 3 or 5, or acting alone. All of them were looking for something. Everyone, this area is occupied by our Rose Cloud sect. I advise you to take a detour. If you dare to approach without permission, you'll be killed without mercy. As soon as they approached, a middle-aged man in black with a curly beard on one of the reefs suddenly shouted with a murderous look in his eyes. Lin Sun was stunned. Spreading his divine awareness, he saw a group of practitioners digging something in the river in the nearby area. Obviously, this middle-aged man in black with a curly beard was a sentry. At the same time, a practitioner cried out in surprise, I found it! I found it! It's a good quality meteorite. In his hand was a stone the size of an alms bowl. It was dark and glowed with a cold metallic luster. Looking carefully, the surface of the stone was branded with strands of silver veins, and it was enshrouded with dreamlike starlight. Immediately, The nearby strong practitioners of the Rose Cloud sect surrounded it. Cut it open and have a look. Their eyes were fiery, and they all stared at the newly excavated meteorite. Lin Sun and the others couldn't help but be curious. But the middle-aged man in black with a curly beard became vigilant and shouted sternly, "If you don't leave now, don't blame me for being rude." Ko Xing and the others frowned. This guy was only at the initial stage of the reincarnation developing realm. He was even inferior to them, but he dared to reprimand them like this. It was disgusting. Let's go. Lin Sun didn't care about this. With his current realm, he wouldn't be provoked casually. Unless it was deliberately against him, he didn't bother to care about it. They immediately steered the treasured vessel to take a detour and head towards the depths of Random Star Beach. All along the way, they saw the figures of cultivators everywhere on the large and small reefs. All of them were using various methods to excavate the meteorites, and it was a scene of bustling activity. At the same time, there were many cultivators on sentry duty and were vigilant against the approach of other cultivators. During this process, Lin Sun and the others were repeatedly reprimanded and ordered not to approach. Lin Sun didn't feel anything, but Ko Xing and the others were full of anger. Damn it, this Random Star Beach is a place without an owner, and anyone can come here to search for treasures. But now it has become like this. Ko Xing was very angry and couldn't help but complain. Are you blind? Can't you see that this area has been occupied by our floating sect? Quickly get lost. It wasn't long before they encountered another cultivator who reprimanded them loudly. He had an arrogant and cold expression on his face, and he seemed to be very arrogant. Ko Xing was instantly furious. This wasn't just reprimanding, it was clearly pointing at their noses and cursing. Bang! However, this time, Lin Sun was more direct than Ko Xing. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the man in the brocade robe across the air. You? The man in the brocade robe was stunned, and then he was shocked and angry. He was just about to shout when his body was smashed in front of Lin Sun and the others. He was dizzy and saw stars. I ask and you answer. Otherwise, no one can save you. Lin Sun bowed his head, and his dark eyes were deep and cold as he looked at the man in the brocade robe. The latter's body stiffened, and great fear arose in his heart. Lin Sun's gaze was like a deep abyss, and it seemed to swallow his soul. It was so terrifying that he instantly understood the danger he was in. Were there so many people here before? Lin Sun asked directly. No. The man in the brocade robe hurriedly shook his head. Recently, there was a sudden and shocking change in the Boundary River, which caused some changes in the Random Star Beach. According to his explanation, even though the Random Star Beach was rich in meteorites, countless cultivators had come here in the boundless years, and they'd already excavated all the meteorites here. But recently, along with the shocking change that occurred in the Boundary River, a shocking change had actually occurred in the Random Star Beach that was originally almost dried up, and meteorites had started to appear frequently. Most shocking of it all was that these meteorites had been buried here for an unknown period of time, and their quality was extraordinary and far surpassed the past. It was even to the extent that someone had excavated a meteorite that was the size of a millstone and cut out a damaged and decayed bronze halberd from it. It seemed to be a damaged divine artifact. After news of this spread, it instantly caused a great stir. Countless cultivators swarmed over, and it caused the Random Star Beach that was originally deserted to suddenly become bustling once more. Moreover, it was an unprecedentedly grand occasion. We heard that some ancient orthodoxies would interfere in a short period of time, so we hurriedly divided up our territory and excavated with all our might with the intention of reaping some benefits in advance. If we wait for those ancient orthodoxies to come, then I'm afraid we won't even be able to get some leftovers. The man in brocade clothes answered every question and was extremely cooperative. Lin Sun didn't make things difficult for him. After getting the information he wanted to know, they let the man go. The great change in the Boundary River will inevitably disappear in the end, allowing the four worlds to reunite and end the pattern of world isolation. Miss Lu seemed to be deep in thought. If that's the case, As this shocking change unfolds, some of the secrets and opportunities hidden in the Realm River are destined to appear in the world. Perhaps this random star beach is a similar situation. Speaking of this, she raised her head and asked Lin Sun next to her with a smile, "What do you think? Do you want to dig up some meteorites and try your luck?" Okay. Lin Sun was also curious about what kind of treasures were hidden in these meteorites. Since he had come across them, it would be a pity if he missed them. As they talked, they moved forward, trying to find an unoccupied beach. But what made them helpless was that along the way, almost all the reefs of various sizes were occupied by cultivators. It was difficult to find an unoccupied land. While they were searching, Miss Lee's clear eyes suddenly narrowed, and she looked at a reef in the distance that looked like an island. Chapter 978. On the distant reef island, a group of cultivators had surrounded a thin and weak young woman. "Little girl, why don't you quickly hand over the star remnant meteorite in your hand?" The cultivator in the lead had a sage-like bearing, yet his expression was ghastly at this moment, and he didn't conceal his killing intent at all. The other cultivators sneered as well, and they stared with burning and greedy gazes at the young woman's tightly clenched right hand because strands of bright silver radiance were seeping out from the cracks between her fingers. "It's mine. I exchanged my life for it. So why should I give it to all of you?" The young woman shivered and gritted her teeth tightly. She was extremely thin and wore an old dress made of coarse cloth. Her appearance was rather delicate and pretty, but she carried a sickly pale expression. Based on her age, she was at most 14 or 15. Moreover, based on the way she dressed, she was definitely from a poor family at the bottom of society. "Don't be stubborn. This is the territory of our Bloodsword sect. We haven't even gotten even with you for digging up a meteorite without permission, little girl." The old man in the lead berated with a ghastly gaze. "Out of consideration for your young age, we won't make things difficult for you. Hand over the meteorite in your hand, and we'll let you go right now. Otherwise, don't blame us for being merciless." The young woman was angered to the point her entire body trembled, and she shouted loudly, "All of you are slandering me. I dug up this meteorite from somewhere else, and I was just passing by when I was surrounded by all of you. All of you, are all of you even reasonable?" Slap! A cultivator moved forward and slapped the young woman on the face, causing her to let out a shrill cry, while her thin and weak figure was blasted flying. She fell to the ground while coughing up blood, and her pretty face was red and swollen. She's just a little girl that came out of nowhere. Why waste your breath on her? Just make a move against her. This cultivator was a robust man with a ferocious appearance, a tall and mighty figure, and an extremely disdainful expression. On the ground, the young woman was filled with sorrow. Her eyes were red, and there were bloodstains on the corners of her mouth. Her entire body was covered in mud, and she seemed to be in an extremely sorry and pitiable state. She knew that resistance was futile, yet she didn't compromise or give up. She still held tightly onto the meteorite, as if she was holding on to her fate, and even her knuckles had turned pale. "Don't fight, don't fight." A cultivator walked out while his gaze flickered, and he stared at the young woman as he said, "I just happen to lack a maidservant to serve me personally. This little girl's appearance isn't bad, so all of you can't destroy her." His appearance was handsome, and he wore white clothes and seemed rather carefree. However, a wisp of lust that was impossible to conceal suffused the space between his brows as he spoke. The other cultivators roared with laughter when they saw this. All of them knew that this white-clothed man was extremely lustful, and he'd harmed countless young women in secret throughout these years of cultivation. Obviously, this guy's lust was aroused again, and he had his eyes on the young girl in front of him. "You." The thin and weak young woman was filled with grief and indignation. She felt extremely humiliated and despaired, and her vision darkened. She'd thought that the meteor in her hand would be sufficient to change her fate. Never had she imagined that it would be a calamity that awaited her. Not only could the meteorite be taken away, but even her body could be defiled. At the thought of this, she had suicidal thoughts. "Cut the crap. Let's snatch the meteorite first." The old man in the lead seemed to be a little impatient as he gave the order. Immediately, The ferocious-looking man stepped forward and grabbed the young girl on the ground in a rough and unreasonable manner. Seeing this, the young girl was already in despair. Her face was ashen, and her heart was as dead as ashes. There was only one thought left in her mind. This god is really unfair. Scram! But at practically the same time, a tall and handsome figure appeared in front of the young girl and spoke. The burly man only felt an explosion in his ears. His soul was in sharp pain, and he saw stars. He staggered to the ground and held his head as he screamed miserably. The cultivators of the Bloodsword sect narrowed their eyes in unison as they looked at the figure that stood in front of the young girl. They could not help but frown when they saw that it was only a young man at the middle stage of the reincarnation development realm. "Young master, why are you interfering with the matters of the Bloodsword sect?" The old man in the lead asked in a deep voice. The young man was Lin's son. He paid no attention to these fellows, and instead looked at Miss Lu, who was approaching from not far away. The reason why he'd helped this time was partly out of righteous indignation and reluctance, and partly because Miss Lu had shown unusual agitation and anger. She was not as calm and composed as before. This made Lin Sun acutely realize that this matter was not simple. Sure enough, when Miss Lu arrived at this moment and saw the young girl lying on the muddy ground in a miserable and desperate state, her hands trembled slightly, and a hint of uncontrollable anger appeared on her delicate face. This was an extremely rare emotion that Lin Sun had never seen from Miss Lu. At the same time, the thin girl was also a little confused. She had originally given up hope and had already planned to end her own life, but she never thought that she would actually be saved. "How dare you? That girl is our prey. Whoever dares to touch her will be the enemy of the Bloodsword sect," the old man in the lead shouted. As he spoke, he had already ordered the others to attack. This was because he sensed that something was wrong and was worried that the Starsea meteorite in the girl's hands would be taken away. Boom! There were more than 10 experts of the Bloodsword sect. When they attacked together, the momentum was extremely spectacular and shocking. It immediately attracted the attention of many cultivators in other areas. "Hurry up and leave," the thin girl blurted out anxiously. This somewhat surprised Lin Sun and Miss Lu. They looked at each other and made a decision in their hearts. "Die." The handsome man in white clothes was the first to rush over, and he waved a jade fan that was painted with gold. With a swoosh, the surface of the fan surged with a bloody glow, and the ribs of the fan shot out a peerlessly fierce bloody glow. The most vicious thing was that this attack was not aimed at Lin Sun and Miss Lu, but at the thin girl on the ground. "If I can't get it, don't even think about getting it," he shouted with a cold expression. However, what terrified him was that before his attack could get close, it was silently engulfed and disappeared completely. The young man opposite him did not make any movements from beginning to end. He just stared at him with cold eyes. Not good. He realized that something was amiss, and his heart trembled. He wanted to escape without hesitation. However, as soon as he turned around, he felt an invisible and terrifying pressure coming at him like a mountain falling from the sky. Plop! He was directly pressed to the ground. All his bones and tendons were broken, and blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. Before he could even scream, he directly fainted. All of this took a long time to describe, but it actually happened in an instant. It was incredibly fast. Looking from a distance, it seemed that the man in white was suppressed and fell to the ground silently. The scene was extremely strange. When a man in white was suppressed, the other experts of Bloodsword sect had also taken action. When they saw this strange and terrifying scene, their faces changed greatly. But when they wanted to react, it was obviously a step too late. A terrifying pressure was suddenly released from Lin Sun's body. It was like a great abyss swallowing the sky, covering the earth and making the void wail and submit. Next, there was a series of thuds. All the experts of Bloodsword sect, including the leading old man, were suppressed to the ground at the same time. All of them were bleeding from their mouths and noses, screaming incessantly. In an instant, the whole world was filled with their shrill and terrified cries, causing the alarmed practitioners in the distance to change their expressions. Even the way they looked at Lin soon changed. There was a kind of incomparable fear in them. These guys are really abominable. They deserve to suffer for offending child Lin. Ko Xing and the others all felt very happy. The thin girl had long been dumbfounded. She could not believe her eyes. She doubted that she was dreaming, and it was so unreal. Seeing this, Miss Lu sighed in her heart. A touch of sadness appeared between her brows as she recalled too many past events and memories. Back then, she was also a lonely girl struggling at the bottom of society. It was difficult for her to eat her fill every day. In order to survive, she often even had to compete with the beggars on the street for food. Later on, in order to change her fate, she also worked hard like this girl. She thought that with a treasure that she had exchanged her life for, she could no longer suffer such hardships. But in the end, she also despaired and was bitterly disappointed, because back then, she had encountered almost exactly the same thing as this girl in front of her. Fortunately, her master happened to pass by and saved her. He took her back to the sect to cultivate and change her fate from then on. Fortunately, the girl in front of her was saved, and she no longer had to face the shock of despair and death thinking of this. Miss Lu couldn't help but look at the girl with a touch of relief and pity. Child, our Bloodsword sect has no grievances with you. On the ground, the old man was begging bitterly with a pained expression. Lin Sun looked at Miss Lu. Miss Lu turned to look at the young girl. The girl pursed her lips, and her eyes were filled with hatred. But in the end, she shook her head and said, "Big brother, big sister, I don't want to kill them now." "Why?" Miss Lu asked. I want to take revenge myself in the future." The girl lowered her head, but her voice was extremely firm. "What if you still can't change your situation from today onwards?" Miss Lu asked. The girl was stunned, and then she pursed her lips and said, "I've never thought about this. Since I can remember, I have nothing, so I'm not afraid to gamble with my life." Her words were calm, but there was a touch of determination in them. Miss Lee's eyes became softer, and a touch of relief appeared on her lips. In a trance, she remembered herself many years ago. In the face of her master's inquiry, she also said in a firm tone, "I'm alone. In order to survive, there's no way out. If I can't change it, death is nothing." It was also this sentence that made her master take her in. "Big sister, this meteorite is for you." At this time, the girl took a deep breath and seemed to have made a decision. She opened her clenched right hand and handed it to Miss Lu. In an instant, a bright silver light emerged from the girl's palm. It was as beautiful as a dream, and it emitted a surprising and obscure fluctuation. Chapter 979. Lin Sun's eyes were also attracted by it. He could tell that it was a rare meteorite just by feeling it. It was extraordinary. It was dark and translucent, flowing with a dreamy silver light. It was very amazing. The practitioners of Bloodsword sect could not be blamed for being greedy. If it were any other practitioner, they might not be able to resist such temptation. Such a treasure falling into the hands of a thin girl was undoubtedly a crime for possessing a jade ring. She had suffered an innocent calamity. You refused to hand it over with your life. Why are you giving it to us now? Miss Lu could not help but ask. These are two different things. I can distinguish between good and bad. The girl wiped off the blood stains on her face, her eyes bright. Aren't you worried that we saved you for this thing? Miss Lu asked with interest. As long as you have a clear conscience, the girl said. Miss Lu smiled, looking at the girl with increasingly kind and pitiful eyes. My way is where my heart is at peace. Lin Sun's heart moved. He also found a rare quality in the thin girl. Her heart was firm, and she would not be confused by external things. In the end, Lin Sun and the others did not take the meteorite in the girl's hands. Instead, they took it and left the area. The practitioners of Bloodsword sect had escaped from death, but they did not feel a trace of joy, because they knew that if the thin girl changed her fate, she would come back for revenge sooner or later. Who was that guy? What a terrifying power. He didn't even make a move, but he suppressed all the strong practitioners of Bloodsword sect. Could he be a peerless figure from some ancient orthodoxy? Don't be surprised. Recently, there have been many new peerless figures in Dongxing domain. The great era is coming, and the boundary river will disappear. The four domains of ancient desolation will reunite and restore the complete appearance of the ancient times. In the future, the world will be lively. Some practitioners on some reefs nearby could not help but sigh with emotion after witnessing the scene of Lin Sun's power. Some practitioners also rejoiced inwardly. They had reprimanded Lin Sun and his companions before and forbade them from approaching. Now, thinking about it, their behavior was just like courting death. Fortunately, Lin Sun and his companions didn't care about it. Random Star Beach was extremely large and covered in reefs. Dusky mist enveloped this area, causing it to seem extremely mysterious. On the treasure ship, Miss Lu had already decided to bring the thin young girl back to the sect. This made Ko Xing and the others extremely envious. All of them were clearly aware that from today onward, this seemingly pitiful and lonely poor young woman was bound to make a great leap and become completely different from before. Xiaohe, where did you find this meteorite? It's just up ahead. We'll have to pass through more than 10 islands and reefs along the way. We'll also have to pass through a foggy area. Xiaohe was the name of that skinny girl. That place is very strange. There are many bones piled up, and there are terrifying beasts roaming around. But every night, there will be a lot of starlight. It's silvery and beautiful, just like a river of stars. Upon hearing this, Lin Sun and Miss Lu realized that the place was destined to be extraordinary. At the same time, a look of reminiscence and infatuation appeared on Xiaohe's face. At that time, I even thought that I had arrived in outer space. There were bright stars everywhere along the way. Unfortunately, I didn't dare to go any further halfway. Why? Miss Lu couldn't help asking. I heard a series of horrifying screams and the roars of fierce beasts. Xiaohe looked nervous. Obviously, the scene at that time still made her have some lingering fear. Would you like to have a look? Miss Lu looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. He was indeed extremely curious. Xiaohe was only halfway there, yet she was able to excavate a precious star remnant meteorite of superb quality. It could be imagined that even more secrets that were unknown to others would surely be hidden in the depths of this place. Moreover, according to Xiaohe's description, he could roughly judge that the place might be very dangerous, but there must be good things that couldn't be found in other places. After half an hour, under the guidance of Xiaohe, Lin Sun and the others drove the treasure ship into a foggy area. There were few islands and reefs here, and the river was no longer rolling like stagnant water. It was so quiet that it made people's hearts palpitate. It's so beautiful. After a short distance, Ko Xing and the others' eyes lit up. When they saw the scene in the distance clearly, they were all fascinated. In the void, groups of starlight were swaying and fluttering, emitting a clear brilliance, which looked extremely bright and resplendent in the gray fog. Looking from a distance, it was like seeing a vast galaxy rolling, and the starlight was like a belt, magnificent and bright. In a trance, it really gave people the illusion of entering the universe. But at the same time, there was an invisible sense of danger, as if there was a terrible existence hidden in the depths of the starlight. Lin Sun's eyes were like lightning, and he spread his divine awareness to perceive carefully. Immediately, he discovered a horrifying scene. In the deathly still river, there were many corpses, and they were all in a terrible state. Some had their heads smashed, some had their chests torn, and some had their bodies broken, with only broken limbs floating. Moreover, Lin Sun roughly judged that the owners of these corpses should have died not long ago. Judging from their injuries, it was obvious that they had encountered terrible beasts. Be careful, everyone. This place is a little strange, Lin Sun warned. As soon as he finished speaking, a silver-white figure flashed out from the dazzling starlight like a bolt of lightning, and it fiercely rushed towards the treasure ship where they were. Boom! The void exploded with a sharp whistle. The silver-white figure was not only fast, but it was also extremely ferocious, and it crushed the void. Ko Xing and the others hurriedly steered the treasure ship to avoid it. At the same time, they finally saw the silver-white figure clearly. It was a demon beast shaped like a pangolin. Its whole body was covered with silver scales, and its four-claws were like sharp hooks. Its eyes were scarlet and cold, and it emitted an extremely violent and bloodthirsty aura. Koxing took out a spear and attacked. Clang! Sparks flew in all directions. The pangolin's skin, bones, and scales were harder than magic treasures, and it emitted a silver brilliance that shook off Koxing's spear. At the same time, it let out a sharp whistle, and a white light sprayed out from its bloody mouth. With a bang, it sent Koxing flying. This was shocking. Koxing was a strong cultivator in the reincarnation developing realm, but he could not withstand a single blow from the pangolin. So powerful, green-faced, and Qi Lian did not dare to be negligent. They rushed up together and joined Koxing to kill the pangolin. However, the pangolin displayed an unexpectedly terrifying power. Its body was like a swift bolt of white lightning, moving extremely fast in the void. Bang! 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 In the blink of an eye, Koxing and the others were shaken back one by one. They felt so uncomfortable that they almost coughed up blood, and their expressions changed. What the hell was this? Boom! The pangolin was unforgiving, and it was extremely violent. It suddenly rushed forward, opened its mouth, and a white light sprayed out. It was so fast that Koxing did not have time to dodge. Crack! Right at this moment, Lin Sun moved. With a press of his palm and fingers, a force of annihilation surged out, and it dissolved the white light with a puff. Koxing had escaped death, and he broke out in a cold sweat. There was no doubt that if it were not for Lin Sun, all of them would have died here. This strange pangolin was simply abnormal, and it was even more ferocious than a reincarnation developing realm cultivator. Interesting. Lin Sun stepped forward with ice drake steps, and it immediately attracted the pangolin's attention and vigilance. Its scarlet eyes were filled with bloodthirsty ruthlessness. Boom! It seemed to be aware of the danger. Its body, which seemed to be made of silver, burst into blazing light, and it turned into a bolt of lightning, rushing over. Lin Sun exerted the profound meaning of Swanee Seal and Lower Tyrant Prohibition. With a palm, the pangolin's body was pressed on the deck of the treasure ship as if it had been pressed by a huge mountain. Its scales cracked and shattered and blood flowed. It let out a painful and furious scream. Suddenly, it raised its tail like a bright silver whip. It flashed in the air and actually transformed into numerous sharp blades of light. Lin Sun stood there without dodging. His body was like a great abyss, and the sharp light blades were engulfed and annihilated as soon as they approached. Bang! At the same time, Lin Sun punched out. The scales all over the pangolin's body collapsed and broke, and there were traces of its body being smashed. In the distance, Koxing and the others clicked their tongues. Such a powerful beast was actually beaten to the point of being unable to resist. Child Lin was truly a demon-like figure. But to everyone's surprise, the pangolin was extremely tenacious. It went completely crazy at this moment of life and death. Its body seemed to be burning, and it steamed with dazzling silver-white divine brilliance. It seemed like it was going to destroy everything indiscriminately. Lin Sun didn't even look at it. He kicked the pangolin's head and crushed its skull, causing it to die completely. From beginning to end, he seemed relaxed and calm. Have you seen such a strange demonic beast before? Lin Sun asked. This should be a living creature that lives above the starry sky. Miss Liv had been thinking about it, and finally came to this conclusion. Above the starry sky, Lin Sun was surprised. It should be so. This random star shoal is the remains of an ancient battlefield. Back then, the mad demon sword master once slashed down the stars in the sky, causing many shattered stars to fall here. Miss Liv pondered and said, I suspect that the living creature in front of us fell here along with the shattered stars. Moreover, there are indeed records in the ancient books that there are unknown living creatures living in the boundless starry sky. There were once some powerful living creatures that broke through the barrier and descended into the ancient desolation domain. However, they're extremely rare, and we might not encounter them even once in tens of thousands of years. I see, Lin Sun said thoughtfully. If there really is a starry sky beast living here, it must be extraordinary. We might be able to unearth extremely rare meteorites. Miss Lee's clear eyes were glistening. Just these words caused everyone to be extremely moved. At this moment, a figure suddenly rushed over from the starry sky in the distance, emitting the sound of wind and thunder. It was extremely eye-catching. P.S. Tomorrow is the weekend, and it's also 520. Goldfish will stay at home and write. Release 5 chapters. The first chapter was set at noon, as usual. Chapter 980. It was a teenager about 16 or 17 years old. He carried a pair of wings on his back and was surrounded by wind and thunder. The crackling electric arcs were quite eye-catching. He's from the Thunderwing clan. It's a first-class clan in Dongsheng Boundary. Miss Lu recognized him at a glance and explained to Lin Sun. At the same time, the teenager glanced at the pangolin's corpse on the treasure ship and then looked at Lin Sun and the others. He said, "Greetings, Taoism friends. I targeted this beast first. I wonder if you can hand it over?" As he spoke, his wings were overflowing with electric arcs. Although he was quite young, he already had a kind of awe-inspiring majesty. His demeanor was quite outstanding. Isn't it a bit too much to ask for it, just because you say it's yours? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Too much? No, I'm just persuading you with kind words. The teenager smiled calmly. Then let me tell you, don't think about it. Even your parents can't persuade me, let alone you, Lin Sun said. What do you mean? The teenager frowned and looked unhappy. Wind and thunder surged around him, causing the void to tumble violently. Can't you see that we don't welcome you? Leave now. Ko Xing shouted. Haha, it seems that I'm too kind. I thought that persuading you with kind words was enough to solve this problem. Who would have thought that I would meet a group of barbarians? The teenager chuckled. He was very conceited, and there was undisguised coldness in his words. Barbarians? Lin Sun also smiled, revealing his snow-white teeth. The teenager was stunned and said disdainfully, What? You're not convinced? Lin Sun stepped forward in the void and said, I'm very curious. Who gave you the courage to be so arrogant? Boom! His whole body shone and pressed forward. You're courting death. The teenager sneered. He didn't move, but a silver thunderbolt bow appeared in his hand. Swish! An electric arrow shot out like a bolt of lightning, bringing with it a baleful aura that filled the sky, tearing the void apart. Lin Sun didn't dodge. He stretched out his arm and grabbed the arrow gently. All the terrible power on the arrow was swallowed up and refined in an instant. You? The teenager's pupils shrank as he realized that something was wrong. This was the silver thunderbolt arrow, which was enough to kill a practitioner in the reincarnation development realm. But now it was caught by the opponent. Buzz! Suddenly, Lin Sun raised his hand and swung the arrow. The arrow flew back several times faster than before, making a harsh roar like a silver sun. Its momentum was several times more terrible than before. Not good. The young man was so shocked that his hair stood on end. Without hesitation, he took out a blue shield. With a loud sound, the blue shield suddenly exploded. A rain of light scattered everywhere, and the young man was already heavily injured. He coughed out blood and almost fell into the boundary river. Do you know who I am? The youth erupted with rage, his face ashen. Lin Sun laughed. He was not afraid of this kind of threat at all. He rushed up again, clenched his fists, and carried out suppression. To Lin Sun's surprise, this young man from the Thunderwing clan was also extremely powerful. He was by no means comparable to ordinary practitioners in reincarnation developing realm. With a pair of lightning wings flashing, his speed was extremely fast, almost close to teleportation. Unfortunately, this guy encountered Lin Sun, a demon god who had disturbed the West Hung world and killed a half-step king realm expert with his bare hands. In the end, he was no match for Lin Sun. In less than a few breaths, he was suppressed by Lin Sun with a slap and thrown onto the deck of the treasure ship. With blood spurting from his mouth and nose, the young man was so angry that he threatened Lin Sun again and again. But in the end, he tasted the bitterness. He was severely tortured by Lin Sun and almost died. Tell me, why do you want to seize this fierce beast's body? "And what are you doing around here?" Lin Sun asked. The young man was dying. His eyes were full of resentment, and he gritted his teeth without saying a word. Lin Sun did not hesitate to torture the young man and finally forced him to tell the truth. It turned out that there was a place like a lake in the depths of this starry area in which silver water flowed. It was extremely magical. The lake had appeared recently, and it often showed mysterious visions, which attracted the attention of many strong practitioners. After investigation, those strong practitioners finally concluded that there was an unparalleled meteorite hidden at the bottom of the lake. It was the size of a small hill and was silver all over. The mysterious phenomenon that had appeared in the void had come from this piece of star remnant meteorite. However, there was a colossus that looked like a dragon turtle standing guard at the side of the star remnant meteor. Anyone that approached it would be killed immediately. As such, it was unknown how many experts had died in the hands of the dragon turtle beast. We hunted this alien beast in order to act as bait and lead the dragon turtle beast away, so that we could take the opportunity to seize the meteorite. The young man was tortured miserably, and he was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He told everything truthfully. Bait? Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. Yes, we discovered that the dragon turtle variant beast is not interested in anything. It only likes to devour these strange variant beasts of the galaxy. Speaking of this, the young man raised his head with difficulty and said, "I've told you everything I know. Now you should let me go, right?" Lin Sun said, "Do you think you still have a chance to live?" The young man was stunned for a moment, and then he became furious and roared with resentment. "Despicable! If my young master knew this, he would not let you go." Puff! Lin Sun put his strength into his palm and ended the young man's life. A servant is so powerful. The young master, he mentioned, must be Xing Yiqian, the leader of the young generation of the Thunderwing clan. Miss Lu said thoughtfully. "Is he very powerful?" Lin Sun asked. "Very powerful." Miss Lu nodded. "This person can be considered to be exceptionally talented. He has been cultivating beside an old monster at the King Realm since he was young and has even received personal guidance from a sage. He can be said to be unparalleled in his bravery and is rather famous among the younger generation of the East Victory domain. How is he compared with Yulinkong? I don't know. I've only heard some things about him, but I don't know much about him. But he deserves his reputation. If you meet him here, you should be careful. Generally, such a peerless figure must be protected by a great master." Lin Sun nodded his head. They continued to walk towards the depths of this area. An hour later, suddenly, a series of loud shouts came from afar. A group of strong practitioners was chasing a giant silver bear in the distance. The enormous silver bear was extremely powerful, ferocious, and terrifying. Its fur was suffused with brilliant divine radiance. He slapped out with his palm, shattering the void. "Let's go together. Don't let it escape. This evil beast has just swallowed a piece of meteorite the size of a cattail leaf fan. It's a top-grade treasure. We must kill it as soon as possible." Someone roared. At the mention of the meteorite, everyone's eyes lit up. The higher the quality of the star remnant meteorite, the rarer and more precious the treasures that could be cut out of it. No matter what the treasures that could be cut out of a superb meteorite the size of a cattail leaf fan were, they could definitely be sold for a sky-high price. Roar! However, to the surprise of those strong practitioners, the giant silver bear seemed to be completely irritated. It stopped running and launched a counterattack. What happened next was even more chilling. The giant silver bear swayed and grew to a height of 300 meters, like a giant silver mountain. Puff! It waved its arms like an iron pillar sweeping across the universe, filling the void. In an instant, the bodies of several strong practitioners were smashed into pieces, turning into a rain of blood. "Oh no, Ron! Damn it! How could this evil beast suddenly become stronger? It's cheating. It deliberately showed weakness just now." The rest of the strong practitioners were shocked and angry, trying to escape in a hurry. However, the giant silver bear let out a deafening roar and began its counterattack and slaughter. When looked at from afar, it was simply like a silver-colored mountain was moving and all the experts it caught up to didn't survive, and their bodies were smashed into pieces. In the end, only 7 or 8 experts managed to escape with their lives. Everyone else perished, their corpses lying on the surface of the river. Clatter without opponents. The giant silver bear flashed and became as tall as a man. It opened its mouth and spat out a silver meteorite. Humph, a group of idiots. How do you think about what I have eaten? Are you courting death? The giant silver bear muttered with disdain. This fellow looks arrogant, but I didn't expect him to be so cunning. In the distance, Miss Lou was a little surprised. She didn't expect the giant silver bear to be so black-bellied. It had deliberately shown weakness just now and killed a large number of strong practitioners. Let's go and take a look, Lin Sun said as he took action. Who is it? The giant silver bear was vigilant. It opened its mouth and swallowed the meteorite. Then, it stared fiercely at Lin Sun, who was approaching. Are you a star beast or a creature of this world? Lin Sun sized it up with interest. The giant white bear's fur was smooth and shiny. It was extremely plump and gave off a domineering aura just by standing there casually. The giant silver bear was about to answer, but its eyes rolled and it changed its words. It snorted coldly. Why do you care? If you're a star beast, you will inevitably be killed, Lin Sun said casually. The giant silver bear was stunned. What if I'm not? You will also die. Lin Sun stroked his chin and stared at the pair of fat bear paws. I haven't tasted bear paws yet. I don't know how they taste. In the end, I'm going to die. The giant silver bear was furious and aggressive. That depends on whether you cooperate or not, Lin Sun said with a smile. For example, I can take the meteorite in your stomach. Before he finished his words, Lin Sun was stunned, because at this moment, the giant silver white bear actually ran away. Ha ha ha, idiot. Do you think I'm as stupid as you? If I didn't feel that you were a little dangerous, I would have slapped you to death. The giant silver bear's laughter came from afar, full of complacency and cunningness. When he wanted to give chase, the other party had already fled without a trace, and his figure had vanished into the boundless void. Lin Sun's lips twitched imperceptibly. He was also very surprised. The giant white bear's speed of escape was extremely fast, comparable to teleportation. It was very shocking. Looking into the distance, Miss Lou and the others were obviously holding back their laughter. Who could imagine that the incomparably fierce demon god Lin would be defeated by a giant white bear? Chapter 981. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel ashamed. It was really wrong to let a stupid bear escape. However, when he thought about it carefully, Lin Sun had an indescribable feeling. The silver bear seemed inconspicuous, but Lin Sun felt a vague sense of danger deep in his heart. It seemed that there was an extremely terrible power dormant in the white bear's body. Once it broke out, it would release unpredictable destructive power. It was really strange. Lin Sun shook his head and stopped thinking about it. They continued to move forward. The atmosphere became more and more silent along the way. The void was full of swaying silver starlight, ethereal and ethereal. Whoosh! Not long after, another ferocious beast charged out. This was an enormous wolf spider. Its entire body was sparkling and translucent, and it flowed with silver light. It was over 30 meters in size, and it was densely covered in thick legs. Its limbs were sharp and shiny like blades. It was extremely powerful, releasing a wave of shocking viciousness. As it moved through the air, its legs brandished about like dazzling long blades, slicing open cracks in the void. The battle broke out without any suspense. Lin Sun rushed up to fight with it. To his surprise, he couldn't break the defense of the silver tarantula with only his fists and feet. Moreover, its limbs were like blades, silvery white and snow white, unstoppable. Its destructive power was extremely terrifying. According to Lin Sun's estimation, this silver tarantula was at least not weaker than those peerless figures in the world in terms of combat power. This was extremely inconceivable, and it made this area seem even more mysterious and terrifying. In the end, Lin Sun used the broken sword to kill the silver tarantula, and put its body away. But it was not over. On the way, there were fierce beasts rushing out from time to time, including silver tiger mastiffs, vipers, mountain rhinoceroses, and so on. These fierce beasts obviously didn't belong to the ancient Desolation territory. They should be called alien beasts. They were stronger than the other, and the weakest one was more powerful than the top practitioners of reincarnation developing realm. Even the huge viper with a body of thousands of meters that Lin Sun met was absolutely at the level of half-step king realm. When it was angry, the wind and clouds would surge, and the earth would crack. It was extremely fierce. It took Lin Sun a lot of trouble to kill the viper. Several hours later, Lin Sun had killed more than a dozen similar alien beasts. But what puzzled him was that he didn't see another opponent like the giant silver bear, which gave him a sense of danger. Finally, Lin Sun and the others saw the silver lake that the young man from the Thunderwing clan had mentioned. It was indeed a lake that could be said to be mystical. It was surrounded by numerous islands and reefs, and the lake water revealed a type of holy silver color. As far as the eye could see, it was like a lake of flowing stars. It was dreamlike and beautiful to the extreme. It really is different. Lin Sun and the others were amazed. Didn't that fellow say that there's an unparalleled meteorite hidden under the lake? He even said that it's the size of a small mountain. I wonder if it's true. Koshing's eyes burned as he sized up the lake. Everyone, be careful. There are many experts hiding nearby. Lin Sun spread his spiritual awareness and instantly captured many powerful breaths hidden on the nearby islands and reefs. What surprised him was that there were many half-step king realm experts among them. On the contrary, there were very few reincarnation developing realm experts. However, this was reasonable. How could those who could come all the way here be ordinary people? If it weren't for Lin Sun, Ko Xing and the others wouldn't have been able to come here by themselves. It's weird. Since these guys are already here, why don't I see anyone taking action? Ko Xing and the others also felt a little strange. It's very simple. They're all waiting for the best time. No one is willing to be the first to die. Miss Li's clear eyes sparkled. From this, we can infer that there must be great danger hidden in the Silver Lake. Even those half-step king realm experts have to be cautious and don't dare to act arbitrarily. Don't worry about them. You stay here later. I'll set up a formation to protect you. I'll try the weirdness in the lake alone, Lin Sun suddenly said. A trace of imperceptible strangeness flashed in the depths of his eyes. Because at this moment, Little Silver, who had been imprisoned in his sea of consciousness, was extremely excited, which was very unusual. Will it be too dangerous for you to go alone? Miss Lu was a little worried. Don't forget that there are many ruthless people hiding nearby. Even if you have some gains at the bottom of the lake, you will definitely be attacked by them as long as you return. These words were nothing more than a reminder to Lin Sun that the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. I understand. Even if I encounter danger, don't I have a backup plan? Lin Sun smiled. As he spoke, he waved his sleeve, and bronze formation flags splashed out and inserted into the void. In the blink of an eye, the king's 4 symbols was set up. At the same time, Lin Sun handed Miss Lu the formation plate and a storage bag filled with upper-grade spiritual marrow. This was the key to activating the formation. Once they encountered danger, they only needed to control the formation plate and use the power of the spiritual marrow as support to activate the entire formation. Now, I can't wait for some ignorant fellows to rush over and throw their lives away. If that's the case, we might even be able to plunder some spoils of war. After all, those fellows have already arrived here. I'm sure they've already excavated quite a number of star remains and meteorites, said Miss Lu with a smile. Ko Xing and the others couldn't help but laugh. At the same time, Lin Sun had already moved alone and approached the Silver Lake. He seemed to be taking a leisurely stroll with a relaxed demeanor, but in fact, the strength in his body had long been ready. He was like a fully drawn bowstring, ready to shoot at any moment. Lin Sun didn't stop until he reached the lakeside. Little Silver, don't you think we can talk now? Lin Sun said leisurely in his sea of consciousness. Little Silver had been unusually excited ever since he arrived at the Silver Lakeside, But when he heard Lin Sun's words, he immediately calmed down and said, "Master, what are you up to now? Give up. I won't be fooled by you again. My pride and dignity will not be trampled on again, not even by you." Lin Sun almost choked to death by these words. He was a little flustered and exasperated. "Little guy, what are you saying? Are you trying to rebel? I've let you reflect for so many days, and this is the result? Master, I didn't do anything wrong. You were wrong. You shouldn't have deceived me so black-hearted last time. If you don't apologize, I won't forgive you." Little Silver was very stubborn, like a child. Lin Sun was speechless. He had never seen such an arrogant spirit-eating insect. It kept calling him master, but didn't listen to him at all. "Okay, I apologize to you. I was indeed a little thoughtless last time, but I did it to make you stay by my side. You should understand my good intentions and not choose to fight against me." Lin Sun sighed and inculcated this proud little guy. Not sincere enough, Little Silver's answer was stiff. "You?" Lin Sun was just about to get angry and teach this disobedient little thing a lesson when Little Silver changed the subject. "But I forgive you." At once, Lin Sun snorted and said, "That's more like it." Then his anger disappeared. Little Silver was indeed like a child. After saying that he forgave Lin Sun, he seemed to have completely untied the knot in his heart. He said excitedly, "Master, there's a powerful soul source in this place. If I can get it, I can advance further and grow to the third stage. At that time, I can degenerate from an insect body and turn into a human form." Soul source? Lin Sun's black eyes narrowed. "Yes, a very pure and powerful soul source, which is hidden under the Silver Lake." Little Silver's voice had a hint of hope. "Master, don't you want to see me advance? If I can degenerate into a human form, then I can awaken the talent of my bloodline and practice the inherited secret method of our spirit-eating insect tribe." Lin Sun was shocked. Only then did he realize that he seemed to have underestimated Little Silver's potential. This was an exotic insect ranked in the top 10 in ancient times, and now it had the potential to become a king. If it could awaken the talent, it was destined to become more powerful. "Are you begging me?" Lin Sun felt very comfortable and thought that he had taken the initiative. "Master, this is what you should do," Little Silver said seriously. Black lines appeared on Lin Sun's forehead. This little guy was too upright. Couldn't he show even a little bit of weakness and be kind to him? "Master, our spirit-eating insect tribe is born with pride and will never do those shameless and flattering things. Please respect me in the future," Little Silver said sternly. Lin Sun was completely defeated by this little guy. Although he gnashed his teeth with hatred and had the impulse to beat this little guy up, in the end he held back. In any case, it was a spirit-eating insect after all, and a larva with a king body. It had been famous in ancient times, so he had to respect it. "I'll enter the lake later, and you'll show me the way. It's up to you whether we can get the power of the soul source or not." Lin Sun put aside distracting thoughts and said seriously, "Yes." Little Silver nodded hard. Lin Sun was very pleased and muttered in his heart that it would be good if Little Silver was usually so obedient. Without further delay, Lin Sun was ready to act. His figure flashed, and he rose into the air, carefully sweeping towards the center of the Silver Lake. That boy finally can't stand it anymore. I don't know which family he belongs to. He's too reckless and impulsive, and he doesn't even know that he's about to die. Isn't that better? That ferocious beast at the bottom of the lake is extremely terrifying, and it's swallowed countless experts during these past few days. If this kid is able to attract that ferocious beast, then we can seize this opportunity to seize that piece of star remains meteorite. He's really young and ignorant. Many strong people were hiding on the islands and reefs near the Silver Lake. When they saw Lin Sun's action, their expressions became strange, including mockery, playfulness, pity, and gloating. At the same time, Miss Lu and the others hiding in the king's four symbols forbidden formation couldn't help but become nervous. They stared at Lin Sun's figure, lest something should happen to him. Chapter 982. Lin Sun cautiously flew high in the sky and spread his divine sense in all directions. Then, he began to take out the corpses from the storage ring. First was the carcass of a pangolin. He threw it into the lake, and the originally calm surface of the lake splashed with silver waves. This kid is smart. He knows to use the flesh and blood of the alien beast as bait to attract the attention of the dragon turtle. Many big shots commented in secret. I've seen that pangolin before. Its combat strength is extremely violent and ferocious. Ordinary reincarnation, developing realm cultivators are no match for it. I didn't expect this kid to kill it. Deducing from this, the reason why this kid is so fearless is because he has confidence. Unfortunately, he is still too young. He doesn't know how terrifying the dragon turtle at the bottom of the lake is. The sound of discussion arose in the dark. Although Lin Sun's performance surprised them, they still believed that Lin Sun would undoubtedly die. This kid is very capable. He even hunted a silver wolf spider beast. That's a terrifying exotic beast of the galaxy. Soon, everyone was stunned when they saw Lin Sun take out the corpse of a silver white spider that was more than 30 meters long and throw it into the lake. I've seen this wolf spider. It has killed many strong people. It is bloodthirsty and abnormal. Even the top experts in the reincarnation developing realm would not dare to confront this monster. Is this kid a pro-disciple of some great force? Suddenly, many strong people looked at Lin Sun differently. They realized that he might be a stunning figure in the younger generation. Imperceptibly, they restrained a lot of their disdain and contempt. That's not right. He has already thrown out 2 corpses. According to previous experience, the dragon turtle at the bottom of the lake should have been alarmed long ago. Why is there no movement until now? Some people were puzzled. This scene was very unusual. Other strong people also found it strange. They were somewhat uncertain and bewildered. Could it be that the bait is not enough? Lin Sun was also puzzled. He stood high up in the sky, thought for a moment, and began to throw the corpses again. When they noticed this scene, whether it was the half-step king realm experts on the nearby islands or the reincarnation developing realm cultivators, they were all dumbfounded and gasped. Alien tiger mastiff, alien mountain rhinoceros, silver-armored praying mantis. One after another, the bloodthirsty and perverted star beasts were tossed out of the young man's hands into the lake like garbage. The lake water began to tumble violently, splashing out layers upon layers of silver waves. The scene looked magnificent and beautiful. However, in the eyes of all the experts, this scene carried a unique and shocking force, and it created a strong visual impact that almost caused them to be dumbfounded. What the F***CK? Isn't this too much of a freak? Did he really kill more than 10 astral beasts by himself? Be good. This young master is clearly a fierce stubble. I suspect that even the peerless figures of the younger generation are not as fierce as him. F***CK, I actually misjudged him this time. The experts hiding in the dark were stirring restlessly. They were all intimidated. Previously, they were extremely disdainful of Lin Sun's actions, thinking that it was no different from courting death. Therefore, they all thought that Lin Sun was too young and reckless and ignorant. But now, they only felt that their cheeks were burning as if they had been slapped in the face silently. They realized that they had misjudged Lin Sun. This was not ignorant at all. It was clearly a fierce dragon crossing the river, especially when they saw Lin Sun carrying out a 3,000-meter-long viper. The experts of Half-Step King Realm couldn't calm down. Those Half-Step Monarch Realm experts were unable to maintain their composure as well, and their expressions turned grim while their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. They remembered that this viper was absolutely a fierce character among the alien beasts. Once it was angry, it could stir up the wind and scudding the clouds. Its combat power was absolutely not less than that of Half-Step King Realm. But now it turned into a dead body. No one knew how it was killed. Its 3,000-meter-long body was covered with frightening cracks and hideous scars. Then, the corpse of the Half-Step King Realm Viper was also thrown into the lake by Lin Sun like garbage. When they saw this scene, the Half-Step King Realm Viper felt cold from the bottom of their spines. They felt uncomfortable all over. If the Viper was also killed by that young man, Didn't it mean that his combat power could kill a half-step king realm viper? He must be a little monster from some ancient orthodoxy with peerless talent. Otherwise, it's impossible for him to be so powerful. A half-step king realm viper looked solemn, and his heart was quite unsettled. At this point, the experts that were hiding in the shadows suddenly realized that the young man that was moving alone was far from being as simple as they'd imagined. Get ready. This time, with this young man restraining the dragon turtle beast at the bottom of the lake, it's enough to greatly increase our chances of seizing the meteorite. Some people were excited and realized that this was a great opportunity. Others were immediately tempted. Yes, the young man was so powerful that he could restrain the dragon turtle beast. In this way, it was undoubtedly equivalent to creating an excellent opportunity for them to seize the treasure. Young man, you must do a good job. Some experts couldn't help but encourage Lin's son. Of course, they only did it in their hearts. They didn't dare to shout it out so as to avoid causing an accident. But to everyone's surprise, what happened next caused all of them to be taken aback. After the corpses of more than 10 exotic beasts were tossed out, the surface of the silver lake returned to silence in the end. From the beginning to the end, the figure of the dragon turtle beast didn't appear at all. Even Lin's son himself was stunned. Even this didn't work? What's going on? In the dark, those experts were surprised and bewildered as well. They acutely noticed that some sort of change had probably occurred at the bottom of the silver lake. Could it be that the dragon turtle beast at the bottom of the lake has also noticed the young man's strength and is too scared to show its head? Someone joked, but it drew angry glares from the crowd. How could he make such a joke at such a time? No matter how ferocious the young man was, could he be more ferocious than the dragon turtle at the bottom of the lake? After all, the dragon turtle beast had devoured more than one half-step king realm viper a while ago. It was truly boundlessly terrifying. Looks like I can only take the risk and explore the bottom of the lake. Lin's son frowned and pondered for a long time before he finally made a decision. This silver lake was very miraculous. It was able to block the detection of divine senses, making it difficult for people to spy on the scene within it from the outside. This was also the reason why Lin's son was unwilling to enter the lake for so long. But now, the bait had been used up, and the dragon turtle beast still hadn't been lured out. This left Lin's son at his wit's end, and he could only take the risk. Swish! In the end, Lin's son gritted his teeth and charged into the silver lake. Almost at the instant he entered the lake, he took out the wordless pagoda, which emitted a brilliant golden light to defend his body. This place was very dangerous, so Lin's son didn't dare to be careless. At the same time, all the experts near the lake were shocked. They didn't expect that the young man would be so ferocious as to directly charge into the lake. The bottom of the lake was his territory. Wasn't he worried about being swallowed by the dragon turtle beast? When did Dongxing Boundary have such a fearless, peerless figure? Someone murmured absent-mindedly. It's a pity. Once that young man enters, he is destined to meet with misfortune. He also made us lose the opportunity to seize the opportunity to seize the opportunity, someone lamented. Sister Lu, will Brother Lin's son be in danger? Xiaoyi couldn't help but ask in the restrictive formation. He won't. Miss Lu was actually very nervous, but she smiled and said, Your brother Lin's son is an extraordinary figure. People call him the devil god. The entire Shiheng boundary has been stirred up by him. Don't you think he's powerful? Xiaoyi's eyes flashed brightly as she said, He's powerful. I wonder if I can be like Brother Lin's son in the future and make people remember my name. Miss Lu smiled and said, As long as you want to, you can definitely do it. However, you'd better not set your Brother Lin's son as your goal. Why? Because to catch up to his pace will be very, very difficult. Miss Lu pondered for a long time before answering seriously. How difficult? You'll naturally understand when you have the achievements he has today on the path of great Tao. At this point, Miss Lu sighed inwardly. She knew very well that only a small portion of the younger generation could catch up to Lin's son's pace. And how many could really compete with great Tao on the path of great Tao? Even she couldn't guess or estimate it. At the same time, at the bottom of the silver lake. Eat, eat, eat. You only know how to eat. You're still eating when disaster is upon you. Aren't you afraid of bursting to death? A giant, silvery white bear was flustered and exasperated. It used its fan-like paw to slap a massive creature beside it. That was a strange beast that looked like an old turtle but had a dragon's head. Its body spanned hundreds of meters. Just its eyes alone were like a pair of huge millstones. It lay there like a mountain range, its body covered in dark and ice-cold scales. At this moment, it was chewing and swallowing a silver-white tarantula. Its long and narrow snow-white teeth that were like swords were filled with flesh and blood, and it ate with relish. The giant silvery white bear's paw slapped on its scales, causing clattering sounds and sparks to fly in all directions. However, it was like scratching an itch for the bear, and it couldn't divert its attention from the delicious food at all. This caused the giant silvery white bear to be flustered and exasperated. It flew into a rage and wished for nothing more than to strangle this heartless glutton to death. Don't you see? You're eating the bait that kid threw down. He's waiting to kill you, stupid thing. The giant silvery white bear roared. Finally, the dragon turtle spoke lazily in a low and muffled voice. What are you afraid of? It's good that he's here. Just eat him directly. As it spoke, it continued to enjoy its food. This time, it ate a tiger mastiff. The giant silvery white bear was furious, and it kicked the tiger mastiff flying. After that, it glared at the dragon turtle and gnashed its teeth as it said word by word, I told you, he's different from the others. What's different about him? The dragon turtle was displeased when its food was kicked away, and it stretched out its mouth to take the food back. He has the aura of that old madman on him. As soon as the giant silvery white bear spoke, the dragon turtle that had just swallowed the food seemed as if it was terrified, and its entire body stiffened, and it almost fainted from being choked. P.S. The third update will be up, and the fourth update will be before 10 p.m. There were even children asking about the official account. Gosh, the goldfish said again. Click on the official account on WeChat and search for Zyajinu233. Chapter 983. The dragon turtle coughed violently, and it almost choked on its tears. However, it couldn't be bothered about all of this. Its enormous body that lay prone on the ground suddenly stood up, and it said anxiously, Which old madman is it? Earlier, it seemed to be immovable and calm, and it was calmly enjoying its food and calmly listening to the impatient roars of the silver bear. It seemed to be very absent-minded. Yet now, it seemed as if its butt was on fire, and it couldn't even be bothered to eat its food while its eyes were opened wide as if it was terrified. The difference between before and after was too huge. However, the silver bear didn't laugh at it because its heart felt extremely heavy when the words old madman were mentioned. Is there another old madman in this world that can scare us to such an extent? The silver bear spoke angrily, and it seemed to be very agitated. The words old madman were like a taboo to it, and its heart couldn't help but palpitate when it was mentioned. Didn't he die? The dragon turtle seemed to be dazed. Die my ass. Even the boundless universe, starry sky, can't stop a person like him from going mad. How could he possibly die so easily? The silver bear gnashed its teeth while its eyes were filled with fear. How can you be sure? The dragon turtle grew even more nervous. Its enormous body was trembling slightly while the scales that covered its body rattled. In its memories, that old madman was an unimaginably terrifying existence. The aura on that young man is very unique, even though it's very weak and can't even compare to a 10,000th of the old madman's. It's from the same source as the old madman's aura. The silver bear's eyes surged with light. I once came into close contact with that young man and personally sensed it. It's absolutely not wrong. It's really that sort of aura. The fangs in the dragon turtle's mouth were trembling, and it seemed to be extremely terrified. This seemed to be very amusing because a terrifying being that had once swallowed a half-step king realm expert was terrified to such an extent from merely a single aura. If an outsider were to see this, they would probably not dare believe their eyes. The silver bear nodded with a heavy heart. At that time, it was shocked out of its wits. Even though it was clearly aware that the young man's cultivation wasn't sufficient to deter it, it couldn't arouse the intention to go against the young man, and it had no choice but to flee. The reason was that the aura of the energy of the Grand Tao on the young man's body possessed a strength that was sufficient to make it feel fearful and fearful. Now you should understand. This time, we have to change our territory. The giant, silvery white bear sighed. In truth, when the boundary river underwent such a great change, I already knew that this day would come. But I didn't expect it to come so soon. Even the aura of that crazy old man has appeared. Old friend, we can only leave. When the silver bear spoke up to hear, it suddenly turned around, yet it noticed that the dragon turtle had actually fled a long time ago, and it was unbelievably swift. You motherfucker, why the fuck are you still the same as back then, running away without even saying anything? The giant silvery white bear was flabbergasted, furious to the extreme. If we escaped, we would have been dead long ago. Stop talking nonsense, and quickly take the young miss away. At the bottom of the lake, the dragon turtle's four limbs shifted. Its enormous body was unbelievably fast as it stirred up the silver lake water. The immortal artifact roared as it roared. Anyone who saw this scene would be overwhelmed by fear. Such a terrifying dragon turtle was fleeing faster than anyone else, like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bowstring. Seeing this, the giant silvery white bear dared not neglect and started to run wildly at the bottom of the lake. Rumble. As soon as Lin Sun entered the silver lake, he felt that the lake water suddenly rolled violently as if it was boiling, producing a powerful impact that pressed on him from all directions. Could it be that the dragon turtle has been patiently waiting for me to enter before launching an attack directly? Lin Sun's heart tightened. He activated the wordless pagoda to defend himself and rushed to the bottom of the lake. If he chose to turn back at this moment, it would be even more dangerous. If he went against the flow, he might have a chance to resist and save his life. Moreover, he also wanted to have a try to see how powerful the dragon turtle was. However, although the lake water was rolling more and more fiercely, Lin Sun didn't suffer any danger from beginning to end, which made him suspicious and more vigilant. When he dived to the bottom of the lake, he suddenly noticed that a huge white shadow was running wildly in front of him at an extremely fast speed. Hey, isn't this the giant silvery white bear? Lin Sun was stunned. He never thought that he would meet a familiar guy here before he found the dragon turtle beast. Why was this guy here? And he looked like he was running for his life. Could it be that he was being chased by the dragon turtle? Thinking of this, Lin Sun's heart shuddered. He couldn't care about anything else and immediately chased after him. He operated the ice dragon steps to the extreme, and his speed was also extremely fast. Shit, that guy actually caught up with me. In front, when the giant silvery white bear sensed Lin Sun's breath approaching, it was so shocked that it cursed in its heart and was extremely anxious. Whitey, why are you running away? Lin Sun transmitted his voice to the bear from afar. He vaguely felt that the situation seemed to be very wrong. Whitey? Fuck you, Whitey. The giant silvery white bear cursed in its heart, but it said in a thick and honest voice, Young man, I'm just taking a walk. Why are you running after my ass? Taking a walk? Screw you. Lin Sun also cursed in his heart, but he said with a smile, What a coincidence. I'm also taking a walk. How about we go together? The scenery at the bottom of the lake is really good. Oh yes, this lake is not simple. It's formed from a real-life star core. It's full of mysterious star essence, which is very useful for activating the meridians and tendons and relaxing the blood chi. It can cure all kinds of back soreness, leg pain, and back cramps. So magical, of course. Otherwise, why would I be so idle to take a walk here? Then I'll have to give it a try. Oh, you're still young and full of vitality. You can't use it. Too much is as bad as not enough. I advise you to leave quickly. That won't do. I'll be a bastard if I don't take advantage of it. Whitey, you're so anxious to persuade me to leave. Don't tell me you want to monopolize the benefits. The man and the beast, one in front and one behind, chased each other. They were talking nonsense and lying through their teeth. The scene was very strange for a moment. Benefits? Don't misunderstand. I'll leave in a moment. If you don't believe me, come back later. The giant silver bear was anxious. It ran faster and faster. No, what if I don't see you later? Lin Sun also quickened his pace. He was more and more suspicious that the giant white bear was plotting something. Then he was startled. He acutely sensed that, after going around in circles, it was actually chasing him in circles. It was obvious that the giant white bear was deliberately playing tricks. Whitey, you're very dishonest. Why are you leading me in circles? Lin Sun's heart trembled. He realized that the bear might be stalling for time. It's just a stroll, isn't it? The giant silver bear answered very casually. Its face didn't even blush when it lied. Then you go. I'll go first, Lin Sun said as he dashed to the side. Because at that moment, little Silver in his sea of consciousness warned him that he had detected the source of the soul source. Hey, little friend, didn't we agree to take a stroll together? Why are you leaving again? The giant silver bear was very anxious. When it saw where Lin Sun was going, it almost jumped in fright. With a swoosh, it started to run like crazy, chasing after Lin Sun instead. Seeing this, Lin Sun was even more certain that this treacherous giant white bear was clearly trying to pin him down. Little friend, wait for me. Aren't you tired from running so fast? Little friend, the giant white bear called out behind him, but Lin Sun ignored it. He focused on sprinting with all his might. Not long after, a dazzling silver light suddenly appeared in front of him. Upon closer inspection, it was a meteorite the size of a small mountain. It was over 30 meters tall, and its entire body was as translucent as ice and snow. Its surface was flowing with blazing silver starlight, just like a real star. Faint, mysterious visions appeared around it. Stars sinking and the moon falling, seas turning into mulberry fields, and all things changing. The visions described the mysterious aura of the vicissitudes of time, which was magnificent and shocking. This should be the star remnant meteorite that everyone has their eyes on. It is indeed an extraordinary treasure. Lin Sun's heart palpitated with excitement. He felt a strong vitality coming to him, as vast as the sea and as strong as the sun. Boom! But before Lin Sun could perceive it clearly, he saw the huge meteorite break open from the inside, and a fierce beast only 30 meters long with a dragon's head and turtle's body and 4 pillar-like hooves rushed out. The fierce beast's body was covered with cold scales, and at this moment, it was carrying an ice coffin on its back. The ice coffin was 3 meters long, surrounded by wisps of holy starlight. Mysterious pictures of flowers, birds, insects, fish, the sun, the moon, stars, ancestors offering sacrifices, and so on could be vaguely seen. It gave off an ancient and mysterious aura. The most frightening thing was that a silver star map was branded on the cover of the ice coffin. It seemed to contain a vast starry sky, and the river of stars flowed in it, as if it was boundless. A dragon turtle carrying a mysterious ice coffin on its back rushed out a meteorite that was as huge as a mountain. The scene was too shocking. At this moment, Lin Sun ran his strength to the limit without hesitation, and the wordless pagoda that had been accumulating strength for a long time sprayed out rays of dazzling golden brilliance. This dragon turtle was extremely terrifying. Otherwise, it would be impossible for all the half-step King Realm experts to be afraid to approach this lake. But to Lin Sun's surprise, this dragon turtle seemed to be even more surprised than him. It jumped up with a swoosh, and its eyes almost popped out as it cried, "My God, it's really the aura of that old madman. This is too terrifying." It cried out involuntarily, and it looked at Lin Sun as if it was staring at a boundlessly terrifying existence, revealing incomparable panic. This Lin Sun was a little stunned. He was about to make a move, but how could he have imagined that he would encounter such an absurd and strange scene? Sob, sob, sob. The successor of the old madman has appeared. The successor of the old madman. The dragon turtle let out a howl that sounded like a ghost wailing and a wolf howling. It strode out with its 4 iron pillar-like legs, and with a swoosh, It fled with the ice coffin on its back. It looked like a stray dog that wished its parents had given it 2 more legs, which made Lin's son a little speechless. Am I so terrifying? Chapter 984. A dragon turtle with a terrifying aura, on the other hand, appeared to be extremely frightened and anxious from the beginning to the end. Lin's son wouldn't have believed it if he hadn't seen it with his own eyes. After standing there in a daze for a while, Lin's son finally accepted the fact. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The successor of the old crazy could have mistaken me for someone else? Lin's son thought of something and couldn't help frowning. He had never taken anyone as his master since he started his cultivation. He had been exploring the Tao alone. If he had a master, it would be Master Lu. But Lin's son didn't think Master Lu was an old crazy. After thinking about it, Lin's son came to a conclusion. The reason why the dragon turtle misunderstood him was either related to the heaven accessing place, or the fight saint technique he cultivated, or it was related to the inheritance of Green Parasol Mountain. Otherwise, he couldn't explain what he had experienced. Master, hurry up. The pure soul source is in the star remnant meteorite. Silver was extremely excited in his sea of consciousness. Lin's son didn't have time to think about it anymore. He looked at the star remains meteorite with a hole in it. At the same time, the giant silver bear and the dragon turtle met up. Both of them were still in a state of shock. How was it? That guy didn't make things difficult for you, did he? The giant silver bear asked. No, but I was scared. The dragon turtle's voice was low and trembling. It's true. The old monster who devoured countless galaxies in the ancient times has a successor in the ancient desolation realm. So, I wonder what Miss will think when she wakes up. The giant silver bear sighed. Let's go. I don't want to stay in this damn place. I can't help being scared when I feel that aura. The dragon turtle carried the ice coffin on its back and rushed to the top of the lake as it spoke. By the way, where's the star soul source? The giant silver bear shouted. Oh no, I forgot about it, the dragon turtle screamed. What should we do? Forget it. Let's go. Miss will wake up sooner or later even without it, the giant silver bear sighed. The 2 ferocious beasts immediately rushed to the surface of the lake. Rumble, from the outside, since Lin Sun's figure entered the silver lake. The originally tranquil lake water was broken, setting off stormy waves and rumbling sounds. His momentum was terrifying. The experts who had been watching all of this were visibly moved, and the same thought emerged in their hearts at the same time. That youngster shouldn't be fighting fiercely with the dragon turtle, right? When they thought up to here, many experts were instantly unable to restrain themselves. Especially some half-step King Realm experts who felt they possessed formidable strengths. They'd started to make a move successively. They walked out from nearby islands and quickly approached the lakeside, thinking that this was an excellent opportunity. Perhaps they could be the fisherman who benefits from the fight between the sandpiper and the clam. In the blink of an eye, over 10 half-step King Realm experts had flashed out, and they were distributed in the surroundings of the Silver Lake and were investigating everything that occurred within it. They were very vigilant and did not act rashly. Miss Lu, the situation doesn't look good. Child Lin's son, Ko Xing, and others were nervous and found the situation strange. He'll be fine. At most, young Master Lin will return in defeat. If he wants to stay alive, I'm afraid that even the old monsters of the King Realm won't be able to trap him. Miss Li's expression was calm. In fact, she was also a little unsure. The violent fluctuations produced by the Silver Lake were so intense that it was impossible to see what was happening under the lake from the outside. This made it impossible for Miss Lu to judge Lin Sun's safety. However, she was very sure that with the ability Lin Sun had shown along the way, a dragon turtle shouldn't pose a fatal threat to him as long as it wasn't an old monster of the King Realm who had set foot on the road to immortality. Rumble. It didn't take long for the whole Silver Lake to tumble, with silver waves rushing up like a volcanic eruption. The place was turbulent. This made the experts near the lake a little restless. All these signs undoubtedly indicated that a fierce battle was likely to take place at the bottom of the lake. This was the best time to seize the opportunity. Whoosh! Suddenly, a half-step King Realm expert was the first to make a move. He took out a purple spiritual sword, broke the surface of the silver lake, and suddenly disappeared. Let's go. Let's take action too. Seeing this, the other half-step king realm experts couldn't sit still and started to take action one after another. They'd already clearly investigated a few days ago, and an enormous meteor that was the size of a mountain lay silent at the bottom of the lake. It was surely an unprecedented fortune, and no one was willing to miss it at a time like this. Whoosh, whoosh. For a time, the figures of the half-step king realm experts disappeared under the lake one after another. Hurry up, hurry up. If we're a step late, we won't even be able to drink the soup, let alone eat the meat. At the same time, the reincarnation developing realm experts couldn't help but want a share of the soup. It was a huge meteorite. Even if it was cut off, it would be enough for them to share. In addition, they also suspected that there should be other meteorites at the bottom of the lake in addition to this huge meteorite. However, just as they approached the lake, a shrill scream suddenly sounded from the lake. Then, under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the body of a half-step king realm expert was thrown out of the lake. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew hundreds of meters high into the sky. Blood spurted out of his mouth and nose, his chest collapsed, and his arms were twisted like fried dough twists. Obviously, he had suffered an extremely terrifying injury. The reincarnation developing realm cultivators were shocked. What was going on? They had just started, and a half-step king realm expert was already in danger? Suddenly, another miserable shrill cry resounded, and another half-step king realm expert was blasted flying like a pig being slaughtered. This person was even worse. Half of his body was smashed, and there were a few deep claw marks on the other half of his body. Blood sprayed like a waterfall. Hiss! The sound of people gasping could be heard without end. The experts who hadn't entered the Silver Lake had cold hands and feet and shivered all over. That was a half-step king realm expert. But now, in the blink of an eye, he had been beaten to such a miserable state. This was too shocking. For a moment, the way they looked at the Silver Lake changed. They couldn't help but choose to retreat far away and didn't dare to come closer. Run. This is a fucking trap. There's not only a dragon turtle at the bottom of the lake, there's also an even more terrifying white bear. Rumble. As the lake water splashed, an old man rushed out. His hair was disheveled and his face was livid. It was filled with grievance and hatred. He had also suffered serious injuries. On his back, there was a terrifying claw mark. His skin was split open, and his bones were broken. A trap? Two fierce beasts? The experts in the distance were shocked. They secretly rejoiced that they didn't take action at the first moment. Otherwise, they would have been in trouble. Sure enough, in the following period of time, half-step king realm experts were thrown out like rubber balls. All of them were seriously injured. The shrill screams and resentful curses were heard without end. It was extremely horrifying. The experts on the lakeside were all stunned. They couldn't believe their eyes. Those were more than 10 half-step king realm experts. How could they be defeated so quickly? What kind of terrifying ability did the two fierce beasts at the bottom of the lake have to be able to do this? Where's young Master Lin? Why haven't I seen him make an appearance? Within the king's restriction formation, Ko Xing and the others were extremely anxious, and they felt the situation was becoming more and more serious. Let's continue watching. Miss Lu frowned as well, and a wisp of worry arose in her heart. The scenes before her eyes truly caused her to have no confidence in her heart. Swoosh! Right at this moment, the lake water roiled as an enormous silver bear and a dragon turtle that covered an area of 3 kilometers charged out. As soon as the two of them appeared, the heavens and the earth dimmed while space wailed. A terrifying aura stretched out from their bodies, and it caused the experts in the surroundings to practically feel suffocated. My God! The hearts of everyone trembled, and they were practically overwhelmed with terror. Even a half-step king realm expert wasn't a match for it, and was captured and forcefully eaten like a worm. This scene seemed to be too bloody, dazzling, and horrifying. Amidst the deathly silent atmosphere, the dragon turtle suddenly raised its eyes, and it greedily swept those experts with its gaze. Everyone's bodies shivered as if they were food that had been targeted, and it caused their expressions to turn grim. Unexpectedly, the enormous silver bear slapped the dragon turtle's head and stamped with rage. Eat, eat, eat. What fucking time is it now? Leave quickly. As it spoke, it didn't even spare a glance to those experts before transforming into a snow-white flowing light that whistled towards the distant sky. At the same time, the dragon turtle shook its enormous head, and then it sighed with slight regret before turning around and leaving as well. Its enormous 3 kilometers long body was like a black cloud that covered the sky. It seemed to be moving slowly, yet it vanished without a trace in the blink of an eye. It left just like that. Everyone felt as if they were dreaming, and they felt it was even more unreal when they recalled the scenes they experienced earlier. But when they saw those half-step King Realm experts that were either dead or injured, everyone knew that everything that had occurred earlier was real. Why hasn't young Master Lin made an appearance? Ko Xing and the others felt even more uneasy in their hearts. At the same time, some experts acutely noticed this scene and cried out, "Where's that young man? Why hasn't he made an appearance since the beginning? Even if he's dead, his corpse would have floated up to the surface of the lake, right? Perhaps he was eaten by those 2 ferocious beasts. Impossible. The ripples in the lake were so great earlier, yet he didn't let out a shrill cry. How could he have possibly died? Idiot. Why care about all of this? The 2 ferocious beasts have left, so there's no longer any threat at the bottom of the lake." It wasn't long before many experts realized that perhaps this danger had occurred extremely suddenly, yet at the same time, it had undoubtedly provided them with the best opportunity. Those 2 ferocious beasts hadn't taken the enormous meteorite at the bottom of the lake with them when they left. Instantly, the breathing of many experts became hurried, and blazing greed couldn't help but surge into their hearts. Chapter 985. At the bottom of the lake, the dragon turtle had smashed a hole in the huge star remains meteorite, which was like a door leading to the inside of the mountain-sized star remains meteorite. Lin Sun was standing in it at the moment, his eyes slightly narrowed, and he was a little absent-minded. Not far from him, a fist-sized, pure and blazing starstone was shining extremely brightly. It was like a small snow-white sun, which made Lin Sun's eyes sting. According to Little Silver, this was a real star core, the life source of a star, and its value was immeasurable. And the power that Little Silver regarded as the soul source was contained in this star core. At this moment, Little Silver's grain-sized, silvery white body was lying on the star core, absorbing the soul energy inside it in a nearly crazy manner. For practitioners, the value of a star core was enough to make old monsters in the Sage Realm covet it, because it could be used to refine a holy treasure. For Little Silver, the pure soul source contained in the star core could promote him to advance, transform himself, and enter the next stage of evolution. When he reached this stage, he could cast off the shackles of his body and show his human form. Crack, crack. Tiny gnawing sounds kept ringing out. Little Silver's appearance at the moment could be described as extremely hungry, as if he had an irreconcilable hatred for the star core, which was too crazy. Even Lin Sun couldn't bear to see his greedy face. If you want to refine it, then refine it. No one's going to take it from you. Why be so cruel? It's too ungentlemanly, like a greenhorn who has never seen the world. Lin Sun despised him inwardly. As he pondered, he began to look at the huge star remains meteorite. Strands of bright silver starlight suffused the air while the air was enshrouded with an obscure and copious vitality energy, causing one to feel refreshed and carefree with just a single breath of it. It could be foreseen that if he cultivated here, he would get twice the result with half the effort. Lin Sun carefully perceived it with his divine awareness. But to his disappointment, this star remains meteorite was as big as a mountain, but it had no special aura. He tried to cut off a piece of meteorite with a broken blade and carefully dissected it. Stone chips flew everywhere, but there was nothing inside. It can't be right. So many half-step King Realm experts have been attracted here, And there's nothing else in this remnant meteorite other than a star core? Lin Sun didn't give up. He cut more than 10 meteorites with a broken sword, but there was no treasure in them. Looking at little silver gnawing on the star nucleus with a hungry look, Lin Sun felt very unhappy. He had exhausted all his means to get here, but in the end, he was only going to help this little guy? No, the dragon turtle was carrying a mysterious ice coffin on its back when it fled. Perhaps it was taken from this meteor. It suddenly occurred to Lin that the huge star remains meteorite was broken by the dragon turtle. Moreover, the ice coffin he took away was extremely mysterious and special. A vast and profound star diagram was branded on it, and it was not simple at all. Could it be that the real treasure contained in the star remains meteorite is that ice coffin? Lin's heart sank. If that was the case, this action would be in vain except for getting a star core. What? Thinking of this, Lin Sun suddenly noticed that there was a rectangular outline mark left on the ground, which was filled with a trace of obscure fluctuation that was difficult to detect. This made Lin Sun's heart skip a beat. If the ice coffin was placed here, it would coincide with the whole outline mark. He walked forward, squatted on the ground, and carefully sensed it with his divine awareness. Immediately, he noticed something unusual. The ground was also made of star remains meteorite. As soon as his divine awareness approached it, an obscure fluctuation emerged, which blocked his divine awareness's detection. Vaguely, Lin Sun seemed to feel that there was something inside the meteorite. Although it couldn't be detected, it seemed very magical. It's really weird. Lin Sun's heart shook. He grasped the broken blade and carefully dissected it along the outline mark left by the ice coffin. Crack! Crack! The broken blade was sharp. Stone chips flew in the air and melted into the lake water, which was hazy and blurred. As the broken blade continued to cut, it gradually extended downward, and soon, a hole with sharp edges and corners was cut out. Clatter in merely the time for a few breaths of time. When the hole had been dug to a depth of 60 centimeters, the broken blade seemed as if it had pierced through an eggshell, and a strand of multicolored and dazzling divine radiance suddenly shot out from the ground. At the same time, a clear and mellow fragrance of medicine diffused out. It was as clear as ice and as fragrant as wine, which seemed to reach the depths of the soul and make people intoxicated. Spiritual medicine? Lin Sun's eyes suddenly became bright. The fragrance of the medicine was extremely pure. Just a sniff made his blood boil, and his body felt like being immersed in a hot spring, with a kind of comfortable feeling as if he was floating in the air. He took a deep breath and calmed himself down. His movements became more and more careful as he dissected the underground meteorite. Soon, a spiritual medicine appeared in front of Lin Sun. It was like a small black tree, with a stem only as thick as a thumb and a jade-like texture. There were 9 leaves hanging on its branches. Each leaf was as white as snow, shaped like a full moon, and its veins were like Taoist patterns, giving off an attractive fragrance of medicine. Its stem was like black jade, yet it had 9 leaves that were jade white like snow. Moreover, the leaves revealed a perfect, pure, divine, and ethereal aura. It was truly too miraculous. Wisps of black and white light rain drifted from the small tree, just like yin and yang, forming a wonderful, perfect cycle around it. Gulp! Lin Sun couldn't help but swallow hard. Even he couldn't suppress his inner excitement, because this was an extremely rare spiritual medicine. At the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, Lin Sun once caught a psychic white ginseng, but in the end he found that it was an old monster who had lived for countless years. However, this king herb before them was different. Even though it didn't possess intelligence, its surging and miraculous medicinal strength revealed traces of a perfect grand Tao. This was a spiritual medicine. Moreover, it was a complete and unprecedented king herb. Its quality was extraordinary, and it was rare in the world. Even an old monster at the king realm would probably fight to the death for it. What a treasure! Lin Sun's saliva almost flowed out. He was a person who had seen a lot of things, but at this time he lost his composure. That was because this yin-yang tree was truly too mystical. Even though he was unable to determine exactly what profound effects it possessed, there was no doubt that it was absolutely a precious treasure that was nurtured by the heavens and the earth, and it was nurtured by nature. Without any hesitation, Lin Sun dug out the Yingyang tree together with its roots. In order not to let it wither, Lin Sun also dug out the star remains and meteorites where the roots of the small tree were entrenched. It wasn't until he put the treasure into his wordless pagoda that Lin Sun showed a satisfied smile. If he hadn't sensed that something was amiss, he would have missed this king herb by a hair's breadth. That ice coffin covers this spiritual medicine. Could it be that there is some kind of creature hiding in the ice coffin, and it wants to cultivate with the help of this spiritual medicine? Lin Sun was lost in thought. Then, he didn't waste any time and continued to dig. Little Silver, who was gnawing on a star core, was stupefied. Master was too crazy. Then, Little Silver gritted his teeth, as if he was not convinced, and gnawed at the star nuclei faster and faster. The faces of the man and the insect at the moment could be described as vicious and evil. If other practitioners saw this, they wouldn't know what to think. Good treasure. It wasn't long before Lin Sun dug out another spiritual medicine, which made his eyes shine brightly. This spiritual medicine was as red as sunset, as if it was burning. It was only the size of a palm, and its stem and leaves were slender, as if carved out of fire jade. Looking closely, this grass contained natural strange veins. Lin Sun carefully identified them, and was surprised to find that those strange veins were imprinted with the mystery of the Great Way of Fire. This made him more aware of the extraordinariness of this medicine. Then, the flame grass was also put away by Lin Sun. Next, he became more and more energetic. He rubbed his palms and continued to dig on the ground. The range of the pit continued to expand, and inch by inch, the stone chips were cut into powder and disappeared in the lake. There are more. It wasn't long before Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. Another spiritual medicine was dug out. This was a golden poria cocos, which was as smooth as mutton fat and sprinkled wisps of golden light rain. Whoosh! But at this moment, a stream of light swept over. It was a dark blue arrow, dazzling and entwined with terrible thunder. Lin Sun reached out and grabbed the arrow. His palm was filled with the power of star obliteration devouring way, which silently dissolved the terrible penetrating force of the arrow. At the same time, Lin Sun also found the attacker. It was a golden-robed man bathed in dark blue thunder and lightning, who was rushing over from the lake in the distance. He held a white-bone bow in his hand, and his breath was extremely frightening. "My friend, this place is occupied by me. I'll give you a chance. Get out of my sight now," the golden-robed man said coldly and domineeringly. As he spoke, he glanced at the golden poria cocos and didn't hide his strong desire to possess it. "Are you from the Thunderwing clan?" Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and asked. "You have a good eyesight. Since you know my origin, why don't you get out of here?" The golden-robed man's voice was not loud, but was extremely arrogant and domineering. He was slender and handsome, with a pair of wind and thunder wings entwined with dark blue electric arcs on his back, which made him look like a thunder spirit. "Ho-ho, like master, like servant." Lin Sun laughed. He had already guessed the identity of the man. Xing Etian, the leader of the young generation of the Thunderwing clan, who had received personal guidance from a sage. He was like the overlord of thunder and was very famous in the Dongxing territory. This was the news that Miss Lu had told Lin Sun, so he guessed it immediately. "What?" Xing Etian was stunned, and then his face darkened. His eyes burst with lightning. "My servant was killed by you?" Chapter 986. Lin Sun said casually, "He was courting death, and then he died. You better not learn from him." Xing Etian smiled. His smile was cold and terrifying. "Courting death? I think you really are tired of living. You killed my people and still dare to speak rudely. You really are arrogant." His tone wasn't loud, but there was a copious amount of murderous intent surging out. His thunderstorm wings were flowing with dark blue electric arcs, giving off a terrifying aura. At this time, many figures appeared at the bottom of the lake. When they saw this scene, their hearts trembled. They didn't come closer and chose to watch from afar. At the same time, they also noticed the golden poria that had just been dug up. Their gazes changed. Sure enough, there was a fortune hidden in this giant meteorite. Young master, hurry up and kill him. If more people come, it will be troublesome. Some young men and women approached. All of them had powerful auras and terrifying gazes. Looking at their demeanor, they were Xing Etienne's servants. That's fine. You guys keep an eye on the others. I will kill this madman. Xing Etienne spoke as if he was talking about something insignificant. He raised a white-bone bow in his hand and placed a blue lightning arrow on the bowstring. With a light pull, the lake water rumbled. After that, a terrifying fluctuation surged and transformed into the silhouette of a thunder spirit. Hiss! Everyone gasped. They stared at the bow. The bowstring was blue like flowing light. Dense runes appeared on it. It was incomparably mystical. The shadow of the thunder spirit was formed by these runes. It stood proudly in the air. The water in the lake retreated. It was more than 30 meters tall. Lightning surged around it as it protected Xing Etienne. This scene was too terrifying. Everyone realized that this bow had an extraordinary origin. It was most likely a miraculous ancient treasure. That was why it could display such power. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. His entire body shone brightly. He didn't dare to be careless. The aura Xing Etienne emitted was comparable to Yu Linkong and Shun Baixian. Just as Miss Liz said, this person was extraordinary. In the blink of an eye, Xing Etienne pulled back the bowstring and drew it into the shape of a full moon. His aura grew stronger and stronger, and the sound of wind and thunder could be heard. The thunder spirit suddenly looked up, looking down at Lin Sun. Boom! A dazzling dark blue arrow shot out, breaking through the limit, its vicious might overflowing into the heavens. Lin Sun's black pupils suddenly shrank, and he dodged to one side. The bow and arrow was a great killing weapon. Although it was not a holy treasure, its power was terrible. At the same time that he dodged, he'd already put away the golden poria on the ground. Otherwise, it was bound to be destroyed by this arrow. Boom! When a terrifying explosion resounded, the dark blue arrow had already arrived, and it caused space to explode into pieces while wind and lightning raged, and it gave rise to waves that shot into the sky. Crack! The huge star remnant meteorite exploded into pieces, and this was only because it was swept by the might of this arrow. The dark blue arrow had already rushed towards Lin Sun. The strange thing was that it seemed to have a mind of its own. No matter how Lin Sun dodged, it would not let go. Seeing this, Lin Sun's eyes flashed, and his spine swayed like a dragon. He opened his fist, and a bright fist force broke out to meet the arrow. Boom! The two collided, causing divine radiance to surge and shoot towards the surroundings, and it caused a great explosion to occur here. Wind and lightning surged like the tide, and in the end, the force of the fist exploded into pieces and transformed into a rain of light. The arrow was also shattered, and it let out a buzzing sound as it swiftly returned to Xing Etienne's hand. In the distance, everyone was shocked. This arrow was so amazing and terrifying, and if it were them, they would not be able to block it. But now, this young man was able to resolve this attack with his bare hands. Interesting. Lin Sun's right hand's fingers were numb, and he felt a dull pain in his bones. This surprised him greatly. He became more and more aware that the bow in Xing Etienne's hand had a great origin, and he didn't look down on it. Oh, blocking an arrow with your bare hands? Unfortunately, I only used 30% of my strength in this arrow. I'd like to see if you can still block it next. Xing Etienne sneered with a sense of arrogance and disdain. The people in the distance were horrified. Xing Etienne was indeed as overbearing and arrogant as the legend said. If the arrow just now really only used 30% of its power, then how terrifying would it be if he used all of his strength? Boom! Wind and lightning surged, and the dark blue arrow swept out again, stirring up a terrifying wind of thunder. The electric arc was dazzling, and it submerged the entire area. This arrow was imbued with the power of the Great Way, and it was indeed much stronger than before. Looking from afar, it was like a bolt of thunder crossing the void. If it was an ordinary reincarnation developing realm cultivator, he would definitely be smashed into pieces by this arrow. How could anyone resist this? Open, Lin Sun shouted in a low voice. His fist force was ancient and vast, and it was earth-shattering, deducing the essence of the 9 strikes for shaking heaven. The void suddenly collapsed, and the fist force was like a symbol of the Great Way, showing a primitive aura blocking this arrow. Boom! The place was roaring, and the bottom of the lake was in chaos, like a pot of boiling water. Finally, this arrow was also blocked, and its power was dissolved. But when Lin Sun wanted to imprison this arrow, it flashed strangely and returned to Xing Etien's hand again. Good arrow. Lin Sun stood there, and he roughly judged that the power of this arrow was comparable to his own blue arrow. At the same time, Xing Etien's expression changed slightly. The first time it was dissolved might have been a coincidence, but the second time it was also dissolved, which was not simple. In the past, with this pair of bow and arrows, he had killed a real half-step king realm existence. This was also the reason why he dared to come to this Silver Lake. Even if there was a group of half-step king realm opponents, he was not afraid. But now, he couldn't see through Lin Sun. You have set foot on the extreme way? Xing Etian frowned. Don't talk nonsense. If you have the ability, then continue. If not, then wait to be killed. Lin Sun smiled. Xing Etian's eyes were cold. He had already entered the extreme way, so he knew very well how difficult it was to deal with an opponent with such a background. Are you in a hurry to die? Okay, then I will fulfill your wish. His expression was cold, and his body was surging with lightning, and his long hair was dancing. Buzz! The bowstring roared violently, and with a loud shout, he shot the 3rd arrow. The power of this arrow was different again. There was a vague, ancient sound, which shook the lake to the verge of collapse. Lin Sun's heart trembled, and his whole body shone, deducing the mystery of star-devouring heaven way, which made his whole body seem to turn into an unfathomable abyss. At the same time, the momentum of his fist suddenly changed. This was the star-devouring heaven way, which had reached the level of Tao. Its power was immeasurable, and it had the power to swallow the world. This, Xing Etian was shocked. The power displayed by Lin Sun was beyond his imagination. Especially at this moment, Lin Sun's whole body was filled with the power of Tao, which made his heart palpitate. What kind of Tao was this? Boom! The fist force roared, bursting with boundless light, like a black hole in the void, and swallowed the arrow. Everyone saw that the invincible arrow was blocked inch by inch, and its power was annihilated and swallowed. When it reached Lin Sun's fist, it was no longer a deterrent. Bang! But the fist force was still there, and the blue arrow wailed and trembled violently. Everyone's scalp was numb. Without the help of any treasures, Lin Sun shook Xing Etien's fatal arrow 3 times in a row. This was incredible. At the same time, Xing Etien's face changed. Without hesitation, he called back the arrow, pulled the bow to the fullest, and shot with all his strength. Boom! At this moment, the Thunder Spirit also moved, and together with the blue arrow, it attacked Lin Sun. There was no doubt that this was Xing Etien's strongest attack. Many practitioners were so shocked that they retreated again and again. They didn't dare to get close, for fear of being affected. The bottom of the Silver Lake was completely chaotic. It was full of destructive thunder, as if a lightning tribulation had descended here. I'd like to see how you block this arrow. Xing Etian shouted, and his voice was like a thunderclap, extremely overbearing. It had to be said that this attack was really abnormal, and it made Lin Sun feel a kind of unprecedented pressure. He took a deep breath and punched again. Without holding back, he punched again. Buzz! In an instant, the originally turbulent and chaotic lake suddenly became still, as if it was frozen. An indescribably vast aura burst out from the surface of Lin Sun's fist. What kind of punch was this? Like the sea, It could accommodate all the currents in the world. It also had an invincible power. As soon as it was punched, it seemed to be able to penetrate time and space. And it was immortal. This was the power of the Tao. This punch elaborated the essence of the Tao of water, and it deduced the supreme power of this Tao. This was also Lin Sun's intention to test the power of the Tao, and he hadn't used it before. Boom! The entire Silver Lake seemed to be unable to bear this kind of pressure, and it suddenly exploded. The surging lake water rushed into the sky, and the nearby islands and reefs also suffered, collapsing and sinking. Miss Liu and the others who were hiding in the king's forbidden formation were shocked, as if they were witnessing a catastrophe in front of them. At the same time, at the bottom of the lake, the Thunder Spirit didn't even have time to show its power before its body was blasted into pieces by the punch, and it collapsed into a rain of light. And the blue arrow was smashed, and it let out a violent wail. Puff! Xing Etian suffered a backlash, and his mind was in pain. He couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood, and his face had completely changed. The power of the Tao. How could this be possible? Wasn't this the power of the Tao that only the King Realm could comprehend and control? He was shocked, and he looked at Lin Sun as if he was looking at a monster that couldn't be measured by common sense. You take a move from me. Lin Sun rushed over explosively. His aura had changed, and he revealed his ability. He was like a peerless, immortal sword that had attacked, and he had the charm of killing and destroying everything. This was the embodiment of the Tao. There was nothing in the world that was more pliable than water, and no one could be strong when attacking. The first half of the sentence meant that there was nothing that could be tolerated, and all rivers ran into the sea. The second half was the way of attacking and killing, and it could destroy mountains, rivers, and the universe. There was a sage in ancient times that said, "Kindness is like water." Xing Etian was very strong, and he far surpassed his peers. He was famous in Dongxing domain, but when he faced Lin Sun, who was rushing over, he felt unprecedented pressure, and he almost suffocated. His heart shook, and he quickly dodged, but he was still swept by the wind from Lin Sun's fist. Bang! His body flew out fiercely as if he was hit by a mountain. During this process, the bones and tendons all over his body were cracking, and they emitted sounds of friction. Moreover, his 7 apertures were bleeding, and his soul showed signs of collapsing. In an instant, he couldn't help but let out a scream, and his handsome face became distorted and hideous, stained with blood, and it was extremely horrifying. Chapter 987. With a bang, Xing Etian fell to the ground in a sorry state. Blood flowed from his 7 apertures, making his handsome face look particularly hideous and terrifying. Everyone was shocked. Even someone as powerful as Xing Etian was defeated. There was no doubt that his opponent was also a peerless genius. "You actually injured me." Xing Etian seemed to be in disbelief, and then he was completely furious. Boom! The wings behind him spread out, and blue arcs of lightning flowed like dragons, and snakes formed from lightning. They rushed towards Lin Sun, and the sound of thunder frightened the souls of people. He was completely furious. He was a peerless figure himself, and at a young age, he had already set foot on the top. He had once been personally taught by a saint, so he had never suffered such a great loss. "Give me your life," he roared and pulled the bowstring. With a buzzing sound, a resplendent phantom of a thunder spirit emerged, like a divine mountain descending from the sky. His face was livid and twisted. Being defeated like this was a great humiliation to him. If this was spread out, it would be too shameful. Buzz! The moment the bowstring was released, a dazzling blue divine rainbow swept out. It was more than 30 meters long, and it was surrounded by wind and thunder Taoist patterns. At the same time, the thunder spirit also moved. It spat out a snow-white light from its mouth, and it was extremely sharp like a blade cutting through the void. Lin Sun's body was surging with the breath of the Tao of water. The spirit in his body was roaring, and he deduced his Taoism to the peak level. His whole body seemed to have turned into a vast ocean, and he had a kind of boundless spirit that could accommodate thousands of streams. It was amazing, and during this process, he suddenly changed his fist into a palm, and a strange palm print condensed in the void. A black divine flame spread out, and a black phoenix emerged, emitting the divine light of extinction. Black Phoenix Annihilation. It was an ancient Taoism that once had a peerless reputation in the ancient times. It had the power to extinguish all spirits and destroy all Taoism. It could be called the first-class Taoism in the world. This was the Taoism that Lin Sun had been studying in the past few days, and it came from the scripture of tranquility. Lin Sun didn't need to explore it by himself at all. With the explanation and guidance of the Black Phoenix, he now had a preliminary understanding of the mystery of this Taoism. The Black Phoenix coiled about, its wings scattering out nirvanic divine flames. This arrow was mysterious and terrifying. However, this arrow was incredibly powerful. It was an attack from Xing Yiqian's rage, so its power was also incomparable. It immediately tore apart the Black Phoenix's divine flame of extinction, turning it into a rain of light. This moved Lin Sun. He realized that the power of the arrow had been completely awakened, which was why it had become so powerful. But this was exactly what Lin Sun wanted. He moved his hands and deduced the essence of Black Phoenix extinguishing skill, using it to polish and temper himself. Rumble. This place was in turmoil. The Silver Lake was completely evaporated. The ground was dry and cracked. The spectating practitioners had already taken this chance to retreat far away. It's Brother Lin. Xiaoyi shouted excitedly in the king's forbidden formation far away from the lake. Young Master Lin is fine, but who is his opponent? How could he be so strong? Ko Xing and the others were pleasantly surprised at first, but then their expressions turned serious as they realized how terrifying Xing Yiqian was. It really is Xing Yiqian. Miss Li's clear eyes narrowed as she revealed a look of realization. Boom! In the void, the thunder spirit roared angrily as if it was a real existence. It carried a thunder hammer and struck down, causing the Black Phoenix's shadow to dim and eventually disappear. At the same time, the blue arrow shot straight to Lin Sun with fierce power and dazzling electric arcs. Lin Sun sighed inwardly. He had only scratched the surface of Black Phoenix extinguishing skill and could only use less than 1/10 of its power. Otherwise, it would not have been broken so easily. Buzz! Immediately, the momentum around his body changed. Magnificent black Buddha light flowed around his body, making him look solemn like a Buddha descending to the mortal world. In a trance, everyone felt that at this moment, Lin Sun seemed to be one with heaven and earth, resonating with them. Buddhist chants resounded around him like thunder. This was the inheritance of earth scripture of Ksitigarbha Temple. Boom! He pressed his palm down, and a black Buddhist seal condensed in the void. Suddenly, an indestructible, all-destroying great King Kong and great wisdom filled the world, as if it could even collapse the space. Inheritance of Ksitigarbha Temple? Miss Lu was stunned. She suddenly realized that in that ancient temple, besides the Black Phoenix extinguishing skill, Lin Sun might have obtained a lot of opportunities. What surprised her the most was that both the Black Phoenix extinguishing skill and the inheritance of Ksitigarbha Temple had extremely harsh requirements and restrictions for practitioners. Like the former, it was almost impossible for practitioners who had not awakened the immortal Phoenix bloodline. But with Lin Sun, this restriction seemed to have been broken. Bang, 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 the Buddha seal flew across the sky and collided with the blue arrow, shaking it and producing a buzzing sound. Finally, it was defeated, its wail shocking the 9 heavens. How is this possible? Xing Yiqian was furious and extremely shocked. This time, he did not hold back and attacked with all his strength, but it was still broken. With a swoosh, Lin Sun rushed over. In the void, wherever he passed, black lotus seeds bloomed one after another. The divine light was dense, and the Buddha light was floating. One step, one lotus. Like the legendary Buddha crossing the void, wherever he passed, the lotus seeds reflected each other, and the Buddha light shone. Xing Yiqian finally realized that this time he had encountered a difficult problem. His opponent's strength had once again exceeded his expectations. "I'll kill you next time." He felt uneasy. Although he felt extremely humiliated, he decided to retreat. Although he was overbearing and conceited, he was not a reckless person. At this moment, he became extremely vigilant and realized that the situation was not good. Buzz, he flapped his thunderstorm wings and turned to leave. But Lin Sun was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already rushed up and pressed down with his palm. This palm had the charm of overcoming misfortune and the aura of destruction. Xing Yiqian sensed that something was wrong. Without hesitation, he drew his bow and shot out an arrow. There was an earth-shattering explosion. Lin Sun's palm was defeated, but at the same time, an ice dragon soared into the sky like a snow-white dragon and swung its tail in the void. Ha! Xing Yiqian's entire body was sent flying. Who knew how many bones in his body were broken and blood gushed out like a fountain? There was dead silence. Not a single sound could be heard. How could someone as overbearing as Xing Yiqian be suppressed just like that? This was almost unbelievable. At this point, there was no more suspense in this battle. Although Xing Yiqian's servants saw that the situation was not good and rushed to help, it was too late. After dozens of moves, Xing Yiqian let out a scream. His life was almost released by Lin Sun's hidden earth method. He was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Clang! At the same time, Lin Sun finally seized the opportunity and firmly grasped the blue arrow. But this arrow seemed to have a mind of its own and was unwilling to be captured. It produced a terrible struggle that was even more terrible than Xing Yiqian's strength. Caught off guard, Lin Sun's fingers were almost broken. Lin Sun was shocked. Without hesitation, he suppressed the arrow into the wordless pagoda. Even so, the arrow broke free from the suppression of the golden Tao light and went on a rampage in the pagoda. It was extremely magical. Idiot, this arrow is an ancient divine object. Not to mention you. Even the old monsters of the King realm can't suppress it. Just wait for your doom. Although Xing Yiqian was seriously injured, he couldn't help but sneer when he saw this scene. He knew the power of this arrow too well. In ancient times, it had shot through the sun and the sky. It was terrifying beyond compare. Anyone who wanted to suppress, it would suffer from its backfire. Really, Lin Sun's lips curled up inexplicably. As soon as he thought of it, insignificant Bao appeared in the wordless pagoda. The Bao, which seemed to be made of white bones and skulls, exuded an obscure and cold breath. Just for a moment, the blue arrow stopped abruptly, as if it was frightened. It buzzed and trembled. Suddenly, Lin Sun felt relaxed and couldn't help marveling that only insignificant Bao could suppress this arrow. It could be imagined how magical it was. At the same time, Xing Yiqian spat out a mouthful of blood with a sharp pain in his mind. He was keenly aware that his connection with the blue arrow was cut off. How could it be? He was so shocked that he almost collapsed. The reason why he was able to use this arrow was because a saint had planted a mysterious mark in his body. But now this mark had been shattered. Dying. Lin Sun rushed over without hesitation. But before he could get close, Xing Yiqian's body suddenly exploded with a terrifying golden light. In the next moment, he disappeared into thin air. Golden cicada talisman. Lin Sun frowned. Such a person is like a dragon in the sky. It's easy to defeat him, but difficult to kill him. Miss Lu sighed in her heart. She had already expected this. Xing Yiqian was the leader of the young generation of Thunderwing clan. He was entrusted with the high hopes of the whole clan. If he was so easy to kill, he would have been killed by the enemy forces of Thunderwing clan. This kind of thing had happened in the past. Some clans hated each other so much that they couldn't wait to exterminate the younger generation of each other in order to use the foundation of each other's forces. Because there were too many similar cases, people like Xing Yiqian were absolutely protected by Thunderwing clan. They couldn't let any accident happen to him. Wait and see. Sooner or later, I will kill you with my own hands. Although Xing Yiqian left, his resentful and angry shout echoed in the void. It's time to find a way to solve this kind of thing, Lin Sun said to himself. He had encountered similar things many times since he started his cultivation. His opponents always used various means to get out of trouble at the last moment, such as Yu Lingkong and Xing Yitian in front of him. Lin Sun was very clear that as long as Xing Yitian was alive, he was destined to be a hidden danger. If similar things happened in the future, there would only be more and more trouble. If I can step into the King realm, I won't be afraid of all this. But before that, it's extremely troublesome to prevent him from escaping. Unless I expose the power of insignificant Bao and wordless pagoda, I can't completely suppress him with other forces. Lin Sun also knew that people like Xing Yitian had many trump cards. Even without Golden Cicada Talisman, he would have other ways to escape. As Miss Lu said before, it was too difficult to kill a peerless figure from a big force. Without thinking much, Lin Sun looked at the young boys and girls not far away. They were Xing Yitian's servants. Chapter 988. After Xing Yitian escaped, the servants' fighting spirit had already collapsed. Seeing that the situation was bad, they all fled for their lives. Lin Sun didn't hold back. He used the ice dragon steps to chase after them. Screams sounded out continuously. After a while, all the servants were killed, but this still made Lin Sun feel a little depressed. Xing Yitian didn't die, so killing these servants didn't give him any sense of accomplishment. But even so, the people in the distance were still shocked. Xing Yitian was a powerful figure in the younger generation of Dongxing world. He had a great reputation, but in the end, he was easily suppressed by this young man. What? Are you still waiting to seize the treasure? Lin Sun's black eyes were cold as he glanced at the people in the distance. He didn't hide his killing intent at all. Previously, he was digging for the king herbs at the bottom of the lake. He was very happy, but Xing Yitian and these fellows ruined it. This made him very unhappy. Crash, the faces of those practitioners changed, and most of them fled. After seeing the fierce battle just now, they had already realized how terrifying Lin Sun was. Who dared to provoke him now? Even some half-step king realms revealed a look of fear. Although they felt embarrassed to be threatened by a junior, they still endured it in the end. It couldn't be helped. They were very clear that such a young man had already set foot on the path of cultivation and had the ability to cross realms to fight with them. At this time, the entire Silver Lake had been destroyed. The bottom of the lake had cracked and dried up. The huge meteorite had also been destroyed in the battle. Lin Sun could only feel sorry for this. Fortunately, he had already dug out the 3 miraculous king herbs, Yin Yang tree, flame grass, and golden fulling. Moreover, Little Silver had obtained a star core that could help him advance. This operation could be considered a great harvest. However, just as Lin Sun was about to leave this place, a terrifying aura suddenly appeared in the distance and swept towards him. Young man, did you take the opportunity at the bottom of the lake? It was an old man with dark green hair and a haggard face. Although he was in human form, he wasn't human. There was a jade white horn on his forehead, and it was an entire 30 centimeters long. Moreover, his pupils were amber in color and surged with a strange glow. Old freak Emoshi. Some of the experts that hadn't retreated yet instantly cried out involuntarily when they saw this, and they'd recognized the withered old man. On the other side of the Realm River was the ancient Azure continent that belonged to the East Victory Domain. It was a vast place with many cultivation forces. Among them, the most famous was the Heaven's Pivot Sacred Ground. On the other hand, Old Freak Inc., she was from the Azure Prefecture as well, and his cultivation had broken through into the King realm over 10 years ago, so he could be considered as a new king. This old freak wasn't simple at all. He had a wild and ruthless disposition, and he'd killed many cultivators in the past and formed many blood enmity with them. After he attained the Immortal King realm, he'd restrained himself greatly instead, and he'd taken the initiative to approach the Heaven's Pivot Divine Grounds with the intention of entering this sect and choosing a place for himself. A King Realm expert taking the initiative to surrender was naturally an extremely sensational event. It caused an uproar in the ancient Song province. It was said that the heavens pivot Holy Land had already expressed that they planned to take Mo, she into their orthodoxy in the near future. So, when they saw old freak Mo, she make an appearance here at this moment, all the experts in the surroundings couldn't help but be shocked and reveal extreme fear. That was a real King Realm expert. The heavens and the earth dimmed while the atmosphere was oppressive, and it was enveloped by a terrifying King Realm pressure. As soon as old freak Mo, she appeared, his pair of enchanting eyes locked onto Lin Sun, and his power was unfathomable, causing others to feel suffocated. This kid is going to be out of luck. Those experts muttered to themselves, and they couldn't help but take pleasure in Lin Sun's misfortune. Once a King Realm expert made an appearance, the outcome was already predetermined. How could this be? Ko Xing and the others felt a chill run down their spines. How could they have imagined that a real King Realm expert would appear at the last moment? The King Realm was above the 5 realms, and it was a terrifying existence that stood at the peak of the world. Even though old freak Mo, she was a new king, and his foundation in the King Realm was still very shallow. He was a real king after all, and a half-step King Realm expert couldn't compare to him. Hand over the treasure, and I'll let you leave. Otherwise, you'll definitely die. Old freak Mo, she's voice was very flat, and he seemed to regard Lin Sun as an ant. At his level, he indeed had no need to fear a young man at the reincarnation developing realm. Oh, what high-sounding sentiments. Are you sure you want to go against me? Unexpectedly, Lin Sun wasn't afraid in the slightest at this moment, and his expression was composed as well. His display was extraordinary. This caused others to have no choice but to sigh with emotion. An expert that's capable of stepping foot onto the peak really isn't someone that can be deterred at will. Merely this boldness isn't something that just anyone can possess. Oh, old freak Mo, she was surprised, and then he revealed a disdainful smile. Young man, do you know what the King Realm is? It's that no matter who you are or how great your background is, if you go against me, then I'll still kill you. Bang! As he spoke, the aura around his body shot into the sky and dispersed a layer of clouds, causing the nearby space to wail and collapse inch by inch. The pressure of the King Realm was simply terrifying to the extreme. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun endured unimaginable pressure as well, and it caused him to have no choice but to circulate his cultivation with all his might to resist it. He's actually able to resist it? Old freak Mo, she was stunned once more. In the past, he only had to release some pressure to make his opponents below the King Realm kneel. Yet now, he was only a young man at the reincarnation evolution realm, yet he actually wasn't deterred, and this seemed to be extremely unusual. No wonder you're so arrogant. So it turns out that you're a genius. But in my opinion, geniuses are only able to rule supreme in the reincarnation evolution realm, and they haven't truly risen to prominence in the end. They're like meat on a chopping board, and their lives are at my mercy. Old freak Mo, she grunted coldly, like a thunderclap that resounded through the heavens and the earth, and it shook the ears of those experts in the distance to the point their ears droned while their vital blood roiled, and they almost fell limply to the ground. His aura grew even stronger, and he was like a king that looked down upon the world with a pressure that could crush mountains and rivers. The pressure Lin Sun felt had multiplied as well. However, he wasn't afraid in his heart, and he was carefully experiencing it instead. In the past, he'd once been targeted by King Realm experts, and it was even to the extent that he'd been pursued by 2 King Realm experts of the Black Nightmare Dog clan. At that time, he didn't have the strength to resist them at all, and he didn't even possess the ability to resist them. He could only control the vast universe arc and flee in a sorry state. It was different now. At the very least, he possessed the ability to not be deterred before a King Realm expert. The chi around his body hadn't been suppressed, and his soul and body still had the ability to struggle and resist, and he hadn't lost the power to move. This was a kind of progress, and it was a great one. A King Realm expert like you is just SOSO. At this moment, Lin Sun smiled with a confident look. He also knew that old freak Mo, she had just become a King Realm expert for more than 10 years, and his foundation and strength in the king realm were much worse than that of other king realm experts of the older generation. But no matter what, he was a king. Now that he could resolve and resist old freak Mo-Shi's pressure, Lin Sun was very excited and satisfied. Hiss! All the people present gasped. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would still be so tough in such a bad situation. But old freak Mo-Shi's expression was cold, and his eyebrows were filled with a touch of dense killing intent. There are always rumors in this world that a great era is coming, and the talents of the younger generation will rise and lead the trend of the ancient desolation in the future. But in my opinion, it's ridiculous. If it's true, what are we King Realm experts? As old freak Mo-Shi spoke, he stepped forward. As soon as he stepped out, the world roared and the Great Way resonated. Some strong people felt as if their hearts had been struck by lightning, and they were so uncomfortable that they almost coughed up blood. I'm not afraid to tell you that even if a great era comes, only the King Realm experts like us can really dominate the world if the sages don't come out. Now, I'll prove with facts that you're just a stronger nonentity in front of me, and I can crush you to death at will. Speaking of this, old freak Mo-Shi stretched out his hand and grasped. An invisible big handprint appeared in the air and grasped towards Lin Sun fiercely. The power of the big handprint was too terrible. The sound of Tao roared, and the light of Tao burst out. The knuckles were filled with the texture of the Great Way, and there was the aura of the law lingering in them. Looking from a distance, those strong people had a sense of despair, as if doomsday was coming. This was the King Realm. In everyone's opinion, Lin Sun had no hope of escaping at all and was destined to be crushed to death like a bug. However, the scene that unfolded next caused everyone to be flabbergasted, and their jaws almost fell off. Boom! In Lin Sun's palm, a small mutton fat bottle several inches high swept out and suddenly sprayed out divine flames all over the sky. Wood green flame, gold white flame, clean water black flame, earth pole yellow flame, sun red flame. 5 kinds of divine flames turned into colorful and dazzling flames and swept away like a river falling from the 9th heaven. Old freak Mo-Shi was caught off guard and drowned in it. His eyebrows, beard, hair, and clothes were all burned, and he screamed in pain. Before, he was like a high and mighty king who regarded Lin Sun as an ant. He would crush Lin Sun to death with a casual grasp, which was an extreme humiliation and disdain. Who would have thought that in the twinkling of an eye, the situation would be reversed? Lin Sun was not crushed to death, but old freak Mo-Shi was burned to death and screamed in pain. His demeanor as a king was gone, which made him look funny and ridiculous. Vaguely, there was a kind of meat fragrance drifting out. Old freak Mo-Shi's skin was burned black, which was shocking. The power of the 5 kinds of divine flames was too overbearing and horrible. Little bastard, you're courting death. Old freak Mo-Shi roared furiously, which shocked the world. The sea of fire suddenly burst, and his figure rushed out. Although his beard and hair were all burned, which made him look extremely embarrassed, such a minor injury could not cause a real blow to him at all. But it was too shameful. A King Realm expert had been burned to the point he seemed like a charred stick. It would be too shameful if news of this were to spread. Go to hell. He rushed to Lin Sun as soon as he rushed out. But Lin Sun had already used Ice Dragon steps to rush to the king's forbidden formation outside the lake when he took out the Infinite Way bottle. When old freak Mo-Shi caught up with him, Lin Sun had already disappeared. Formation. At this moment, the king's 4 symbols forbidden formation had not been activated yet. Its aura was almost non-existent. It only played the role of covering the universe. Old freak Mo-Shi only hesitated for a moment and then rushed in. Chapter 989. Black Rhino's heart was filled with humiliation and hatred, and he didn't think that a lousy formation could obstruct his footsteps at all. After all, he was at the King Realm. Little bastard, you won't be able to escape. All of you are ants in the eyes of the King Realm. If you're smart, then it's best that you get the fuck out here for me. Black Rhino strode through the grand formation with a cold and indifferent expression, and a divine glow shot out from his eyes as he swept the grand formation with his gaze. "It's nothing great," he sneered in his heart, because he didn't sense any aura that could threaten him, and this caused him to be even more fearless. However, he frowned because after he entered the formation, the surroundings were boundless, and he was actually unable to capture Lin Sun's aura. Bang! He took a step forward, causing the heavens and the earth to shake while space exploded into pieces, and then a strand of invisible energy of the King Tao was released and swept towards the surroundings. He didn't know anything about formations, but he was clearly aware that nothing would be able to obstruct his footsteps before true strength. As for breaking the formation, it was too simple, and he just had to break it with force. At this instant, Black Rhino's figure seemed to have become boundlessly tall, and the energy of the King Realm spread out while the tune of the Tao rumbled, and the glow of the Tao swept out like a tide. In an instant, the grand formation shook violently while the heavens and the earth dimmed down, and it rumbled as if it was on the verge of collapse. "Little bastard, if you still don't take the initiative to make an appearance and atone for your crimes before this formation is destroyed, then I guarantee that I'll make living worse than death for you." Black Rhino shouted loudly, and it rumbled like the sonorous tune of the Grand Tao. However, to his surprise, besides the chaotic rumbling of the grand formation, he was actually unable to notice a trace of Lin Sun's aura in the surroundings. "You refuse to lower your head, even in death," Black Rhino muttered to himself as he pressed his palm down in space. Rumble. An expanse of dark green clouds formed from Tao markings soared into the sky, and it even crushed down space. The entire grand formation was like a thatched hut that was within a violent storm, and it might collapse and be destroyed at any moment. However, Black Rhino frowned because even though the grand formation seemed to be on the verge of collapse, it wasn't completely destroyed in the end. "I've already utilized 40% of my strength, so how could I not even be able to destroy a single formation? Unless," when he thought up to here, Black Rhino's pupils suddenly constricted. "This is a King Tao restriction formation." Bang! At this time, in the vast wilderness, dense spiritual tattoo patterns suddenly emerged like a tide, pouring between heaven and earth. Dazzling and blazing fluctuations of restrictions swept out along with it, and it covered the heavens and the earth, causing the grand formation to change completely. This Old Freak Inc.'s expression changed slightly as he acutely sensed an aura that could threaten his life envelop him. He had been fooled. Without the slightest hesitation, his figure flickered as he charged explosively back the way he came. He circulated the energy of the King Realm with all his might, causing his entire body to be suffused with a dark glow and monstrous might. However, before it could charge out, the spiritual patterns in the sky gathered and turned into a white tiger that was hundreds of feet long. It roared and rushed over. This white tiger was too terrifying. Its pupils were golden and brilliant, and its body was enormous. It emitted a world-destroying, killing intent. When its claw pressed down, even space itself was torn apart. Bang! Old Freak Inc., she was caught off guard, and he was directly blasted flying by the claw. His figure staggered, and he seemed to be in an extremely sorry state. Damn it, it's an Imperial Tao Forbidden Array. His face instantly darkened, and he was angered to the point he almost cursed. He'd utterly never imagined that such a slaughter formation would actually be hidden at the side of the lake. Swoosh! His figure flashed. He didn't dare go head-on against it, and he charged toward the other side. At the same time, he withdrew his Imperial Tao weapon. It was an enormous bone club. This treasure had a rather great background. It was refined from the origin bone of the ancient divine beast, the nine-eyed beast, and it possessed the ferocious might to split mountains and split oceans apart. Swish! A peerlessly handsome vermilion bird with scarlet red and blazing wings flashed out, and it let out a clear cry, while its perfectly curved body emanated boundless flames that burned and collapsed this expanse of the heavens and the earth and transformed it into a kingdom of flames. Bang! Without any hesitation, Old Freak Inc. she smashed down with the enormous bone club in his hand. The sea of flames split apart and dispersed, yet the vermilion bird wasn't affected at all. It soared through the sky and attacked. Its wings were like a pair of flaming blades that slashed down fiercely, overbearing, and carried the might to incinerate the world. Even though Old Freak Inc. she resisted with all his might, his skin and flesh split apart while his entire body was charred black, and he let out shrill cries like a pig being slaughtered. F***CK your mother. What sort of grand formation is this? How could it be so terrifying? Old Freak Inc. she roared furiously. Yet in the end, he had no choice but to flee like a rat and charge towards another direction. Earlier, he was peerless in might, cold, arrogant, and conceited, and he seemed as if he held power over life and death. Yet now, he let out shrill cries repeatedly while all his hair and beard had been burned off, and he fled in a sorry state like a black ghost. If the cultivators of the outside world were to see this, they would absolutely not dare believe their eyes. Outside the formation, Lin Sun was controlling the grand formation with a relaxed expression on his face. On the other hand, Ko Xing and the others were flabbergasted since a long time ago, and their hearts trembled. This was a true king. Yet now, he was trapped within the formation and was in an embarrassing and dangerous situation. This was unbelievable. It was too shocking. I've already consumed 13,000 top-grade spiritual essence, and this price is almost enough to buy half an imperial weapon. The nearby Miss Lu calculated for a moment. Her words caused Lin Sun's originally relaxed body to stiffen, and he felt a wave of pain in his heart. This damnable Old Freak Inc. she just had to appear at this moment. He's simply going to squander all my wealth. How about we taste Inc. she's meat together later? This is the meat of a king realm creature, and it can only be encountered by luck. Lin Sun gritted his teeth and activated the power of the grand formation. He was going to kill this old bastard at all costs. This isn't inappropriate. Ko Xing and the others were stunned. Eat the meat of a king realm creature? Child Lin Sun really dared to dream. Big brother Lin Sun, I'll listen to you. Xiaoyi's eyes were sparkling, and she looked expectant. Well, she's another little foodie. Old Freaking she is so old, and I wonder if his meat is still delicious. But if we stew him in a bone soup, it'll definitely be a great tonic, Miss Lu thought seriously. Stew the bones into soup and roast the meat. We can't waste any. Lin Sun also answered seriously. Ko Xing and the others opened their mouths wide, and they couldn't believe their ears. Since when could King Realm old freaks be discussed as food? In the distance, some of the experts who hadn't fled almost fell to the ground, and they looked stunned. They couldn't imagine that such a group of people were actually discussing how to eat King Realm old freaks. This was too ferocious, and if news of this were spread, it would definitely cause a stir in the world. At this moment, Old Freak Inc. she was on the verge of collapse, and he fled madly like a housefly. But no matter where he fled, he would be mercilessly attacked. The white tiger that shot into the sky, the vermilion bird that burned the sky with flames, the azure dragon that coiled in the sky, the black tortoise that moved like a mountain. The four divine beast phantoms guarded the four poles, and no matter how old freaking she attacked, he was unable to shake them at all. Instead, he was killed by them to the point of wetting his pants. Little bastard, you fucking tricked me. Old freaking she was furious to the point of cursing, and his eyes almost split apart from rage while blood flowed from the corners of his eyes. This matter was too strange indeed. A king path restriction formation had actually been set up there a long time ago. Who would do this for no reason? It was definitely a trap that was deliberately set up, and it was waiting to trap him. Bang! As he roared, the enormous body of the black tortoise pressed down and directly smashed Old Freak Inc. she flying, causing blood to spray from his mouth and nose while his bones and tendons creaked, and it hurt to the point his eyes rolled back. I'm so angry. Old Freak Inc. she coughed up blood, and he was about to go mad. Since he stepped into the king's stage more than 10 years ago, he felt that unless a saint appeared, he could run amok in the world and fear nothing. But who would have thought that he would fall into a trap set up by a young man in the reincarnation developing stage? And he was even in danger of losing his life. How could he not be angry? It was not easy to become a king, especially for an independent cultivator like him, who had gone through so much trouble to step into this realm, and he hadn't even had the time to enjoy his life. If he would die like this, who would be willing? Needless to say, existences in the king stage were indeed not so easy to kill, and he had actually not been killed after suffering such a blow. If it was any other cultivator, they would probably have been annihilated in an instant. Little friend, I was just playing with you earlier. Please be magnanimous and let me go. I guarantee that I will give you sufficient compensation. Even if I have to go through fire and water to be your mount, I will be willing to go through water and tread on fire. In the end, old Freak Ink, she couldn't take it anymore, and he let out a pleading sound. His posture was very low, and he even abandoned all his poise and dignity. But he had no other choice. The situation was beyond his control, and he really didn't want to die. Be a mount. Ko Xing and the others looked more and more lifeless, and their eyes stared blankly. This was a king stage, but he was forced to abandon his dignity and moral integrity? No, I just want to eat meat. Lin Sun flatly refused. He knew very well that this was just an excuse. A king stage would never be willing to become his mount. Even if he lowered his head now, he would definitely turn hostile when he was free. Eat meat? Aren't you afraid of being stuffed to death? Seeing that there was no hope of surrender, old Freak Ink, she went completely crazy and roared. Do you know that if I die, the heavens' pivot holy land will never let you go? It would have been better if Lin Sun hadn't mentioned the heavens' pivot holy land. Now that this orthodoxy was mentioned, Lin Sun was even more determined to kill this old bastard. Hurry up! You have already consumed nearly 30,000 pieces of upper spiritual marrow, which is more than enough to buy a supreme weapon of King Wei, Misla reminded him. The corner of Lin Sun's mouth twitched, and he used the greatest power of the formation without hesitation. Rumble! Instantly, lightning surged within the formation, sand and stones flew, and divine flames covered the heavens and the earth like lava, and they drowned the entire world. Old Freak Ink, she struggled madly, and he activated the supreme strength to the extreme, and he seemed to be in a desperate state. But in the end, he still failed to escape the fate of being killed, and his chest was torn open by the claw of the Azure Dragon, causing him to die on the spot. Swish, scarlet red blood that was full of vitality poured out like a fountain, and it was tragic, beautiful, and horrifying. Outside the formation, Ko Xing and the others were completely terrified. In the distance, some powerhouses were terrified, and their blood ran cold. Even though they were unable to see everything that had happened within the formation, they guessed that old Freak Ink, she had probably suffered a calamity. A total of 34,000 pieces of upper spiritual marrow were consumed to kill a false king who hasn't forged the Taoist root. Not bad. Miss Lu counted with her fair and slender fingers. Chapter 990. The false king was also regarded as the false king realm. It referred to the life and death realm who had not cast the Taoist root when they stepped into the king realm. The Taoist root was regarded as the root of the Great Way. The gate of Xianpin gathered the practitioner's Great Way and was the core of his cultivation. If the king realm did not have the Taoist root, he would eventually disappear like duckweed in the flowing water. He could only stop at the king realm and could not continue to seek immortality. The difference between the false king and the true king was whether he had the Taoist root or not. For example, if Mo, she had the Taoist root, he could not be killed so easily unless the Taoist root in his body was destroyed. Mo, she had just stepped into the king realm for more than 10 years. Perhaps he was limited by his aptitude, or perhaps he had not cast the Taoist root at all, so he was killed so easily. How could Lin Sun not feel the pain when he thought that it cost him more than 30,000 upper-grade spiritual marrow to kill a false king? Clatter, Lin Sun put away the king's 4 symbols formation, and the body of a black rhinoceros the size of a hill appeared on the ground. It was burnt black with broken scales and scars. I must make full use of this meat mountain. Lin Sun made up his mind. He carried the body of Mo, she, and left with Miss Lo. Xiao He, what do you want to eat tonight? Barbecue. Your request is too simple. How about frying, deep frying, boiling, stir-frying, stewing, braising, boiling? Then will it be too much for me to eat? Then take your time. Lin Sun talked with Xiao He along the way. Hearing their conversation, the powerhouses who were in a daze couldn't help but feel numb and thirsty. Was this cruel young man really going to eat Mo, she? Wasn't he worried about the revenge of the heavens, pivot Holy Land? Mo, she was a king. If it was spread out that Mo, she became food and was divided up, the whole ancient Sangzhou would be in a great shock. Do you know the background of this young man? A practitioner asked in a low voice until Lin Sun and the others disappeared. I don't know. There has never been a young talent like him in Dongxing Boundary. First, he suppressed Xing Yiqian, the leader of the young generation of the Thunderwing clan. Then he trapped and killed old monster Mo, she, with the king's restriction formation. This is not something an ordinary genius could do. Didn't you hear that? The little girl just called a brother Lin's son. Why do I feel this name is familiar? Someone was confused. Lin? Wait a minute, I know. It's very likely that this kid isn't a genius from our East Triumph domain. He's from the West Eternal domain. Someone cried out involuntarily as they realized something. Westung Boundary? Yes. The Tao Discussion Lantern Festival that occurred in Shiheng World a while ago received a great deal of attention, and Lin Sun is a young fiend god that rose to prominence in this lantern festival. Unfortunately, there is too little information about him. After all, he is not a cultivator from our East Victorious domain, and the Westung domain is too far away. I only know that this demon god Lin has stirred up a storm in the Westung domain and is extremely dazzling among the younger generation. The group of experts discussed. When they heard this news, their hearts couldn't help but tremble. A young man from the Westung domain had defeated Xing Yiqian and killed old monster Black Rhino before entering the East Triumph domain. This was too fierce. In the future, how big a storm would this ferocious dragon set off in the East Triumph domain? It was also on this day that some news about Lin Sun began to spread to the East Triumph domain 4 hours later. A treasure ship slowly left the random star shoal and swept towards the distance of the Boundary River. On the treasure ship, Ko Xing set up a big black pot. The green-faced assassin opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of divine flame. The flame was so hot that the water in the pot was boiling. Qiu Yin and the other explorers were busy preparing all kinds of bowls and seasonings. Clang! Xiao He held a saber and slashed at the body of the black rhino beast, but only a string of sparks appeared. Although the beast's scales were cracked, they were still extremely hard. There was a dark green glow flickering on them, and they were even harder than treasures. Its body was extremely huge. Its four hooves were like pillars, its head was like a house, and its tail was as thick as an elephant's leg. Xiao He was sweating profusely and feeling very depressed. She had intended to help, but found that she couldn't clean up such a huge piece of food with her ability. Let me do it. Lin Sun walked over with a smile. He rolled up his sleeves, held the broken saber tightly, and began to dissect the black rhino beast that had stepped into the king realm. The beast's flesh was crystal white, quite smooth and tender, and it didn't have a fishy smell. Instead, it emitted wisps of fragrance and flowing essence, which made people salivate. Lin Sun cut the flesh into pieces. He removed the tendons and bones, which would be used to stew soup. He chopped the internal organs into small pieces, intending to fry them. He didn't even waste the beast's blood. Lin Sun refined it into a bottle of golden beast blood essence and put it into a jade bottle. And its horn, teeth, scales, sharp claws, and other things were also dissected one by one. These were all precious materials for refining weapons. If they were sold, they could be exchanged for a huge amount of spiritual marrow. After working for a long time, Lin Sun put the pieces of beast meat on the rack and barbecued them, smearing some seasonings from time to time. Before long, the aroma of meat permeated the air. The crystal white meat began to turn golden and oily, and the fat dripped into the bonfire, making a sizzling sound. It smells so good. Lin Sun couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Not to mention him, Miss Lu and the others also swallowed their saliva secretly, because this was not ordinary beast meat, but the precious meat of a king realm. Not many people in this world could taste it. Moreover, this meat contained unimaginable cultivation essence, comparable to precious medicine. Not only was it delicious, but it was also of great benefit to cultivation. Wisps of light flowed, and the roasted meat became more golden and oily. The fragrance of the seasonings and the roasted meat blended together, emitting a smell that was extremely tempting. Xiaohe's saliva flowed out, and she stared at it with sparkling eyes. Finally, when the roast was almost done, Lin Sun took the meat off the rack. "I'll have one first." Unexpectedly, Miss Lu was the first to be unable to resist. This made Lin Sun startled, but he immediately smiled and handed her a portion of the roasted meat. Miss Lu blushed, but she still took it. She directly tore off a piece of golden and oily meat with her white fingers and stuffed it into her mouth. "Oh, it's so delicious!" Miss Lu was stunned, and her eyes lit up, revealing an intoxicated look. Her cheeks wriggled, and she began to swallow in big mouthfuls. Xiaohe and the others' saliva almost flowed all over the ground. Like a pack of starving wolves, they fought for their eyes and looked impatient. Lin Sun gave each of them a portion. He also kept a portion for himself. When he put the first bite into his mouth, he also trembled all over. This taste was simply too delicious. He didn't care about anything else and began to eat heartily. He ate until his mouth was full of oil, and his mouth was spewing out rays of light. This was the cultivation essence contained in the roasted meat, which had a great nourishing effect on cultivation. In the blink of an eye, Lin Sun felt the qi around him roaring, and his whole body was bathed in a brilliant, divine brilliance. The others did the same, eating heartily. This was the flesh and blood of a king realm ferocious beast, which was too rare. Not only did it taste superb, but it was also beneficial to cultivation like precious medicine. After eating the roasted meat, they set their eyes on the meat soup and bone soup stewing in the pot. Then, they began to cook and process different ways of eating them, such as stir-frying, deep-frying, braising. There were many different styles and textures, but all of them were wonderful. In short, this meal of meat was very satisfying. Lin Sun even took out some of his treasured wine and ate while drinking. The treasured boat was full of laughter and happiness. They had already crossed the chaotic stars beach, and it wouldn't be long before they reached the Dongxing boundary on the other side. At this moment, they were all very relaxed, and they also realized that they would soon be separated, so they ate and drank freely. In the end, Ko Xing and the others held their bellies and lay down drunk. It wasn't that they didn't have a large appetite, but that the power contained in the black rhinoceros meat was too great for them to bear. When they reached the other side, Ko Xing and the others would leave to make a living in the Dongxing boundary. They didn't intend to return to the Shiheng boundary. They were adventurers, and the path of cultivation they pursued was different from others. Late at night, the waves of the boundary river tumbled, and the sound of waves was endless. Lin Sun burped. He was full and a little tipsy. Beside him, there were animal bones and empty wine jars on the ground. Xiaohe had fallen asleep on Miss Li's legs. Her eyelashes fluttered. This 14 or 15-year-old girl slept especially soundly and contentedly. When we reach the ancient Song province on the other side, someone will come to pick me up. Then, I will return to the sect. What about you? What are your plans? Miss Lu combed her hair behind her ears. Her face was bright and clean, glowing with a gentle and holy luster. First, understand the situation in the Dongxing boundary. Then, I will go to the Heavenly Sword sect, Lin Sun said casually, his black eyes bright and calm. What for? Revenge. Boo. Yin Qingbai. Lin Sun didn't hide it. She would know in the future anyway. Him? Miss Lu was stunned. Her clear eyes were filled with shock, and she couldn't calm down. He was known as the #1 swordsman of the younger generation in the ancient Desolation region. He had too many dazzling titles and glorious and bloody achievements. If you are a friend, don't ask for the reason, Lin Sun said with a smile. Even if you ask, I won't tell you. Miss Li's expression was complicated. It took her a long time to calm down. She gazed at Lin Sun and sighed softly. Okay, I won't ask. But I have to remind you that Yun Qingbai is a peerless figure with great luck. As early as more than 10 years ago, he had already set foot on the peak. His reputation has suppressed all his peers, and he stands proudly above the younger generation of the Dongxing boundary. Over the past 10 years, he has killed no less than 100 souls of half-step King Realm cultivators. All those who challenged him were defeated by death without exception. Now, everyone knows that Yun Qingbai is invincible under the King Realm. The most terrifying thing is that this idea has been rooted in the hearts of every practitioner in the Dongxing boundary. Speaking of this, Miss Lu took a deep breath and said, "Promise me, if you really want to take revenge, don't do it now because the chance of winning is slim, right?" Lin Sun smiled and drank to his heart's content with the flagon. Then he said indifferently, "If I'm not sure, I won't go to him. I have waited for a long time, and I don't mind waiting any longer. However, I have a hunch that it won't take long to kill him." Chapter 991. Dongxing Territory, Ancient Song Province. On the other side of the Boundary River was a big city on the border of Ancient Song Province, Green Flame City. Several hours later, Lin Sun and the others arrived. Ko Xing, green-faced assassin, Qiu Yin, and the other adventurers bid farewell here. Before leaving, Lin Sun gave them some spiritual medicines and treasures needed for cultivation. They were not precious, but Ko Xing and the others were deeply moved. Thinking of everything they had experienced across the Boundary River, they would never forget this demon god Lin from the West Hung territory for the rest of their lives. Then, Lin Sun, Miss Lu, and Xiao He entered Green Flame City together. Green Flame City was surrounded by mountains and rivers, adjacent to the Boundary River. It was prosperous, rich, and lively. Recently, there had been shocking changes in the Boundary River, and many secrets and opportunities that had been buried for many years had been unearthed. This also made Green Flame City unprecedentedly lively. Every day, countless cultivators were attracted to the Boundary River to explore the secrets and dig for treasures. As soon as they entered the city gate, a wave of noise hit their faces. Saint's remains for sale. It's a relic of an ancient saint that has just been fished out from the fallen abyss of the Boundary River. Only 1,000 top-grade spiritual essence. Someone set up a stall not far away and shouted at the top of his voice. This made Lin Sun gasp. Selling the remains of a saint on the street? Were all the cultivators in the Dongxing territory so fierce? Young man, you also came to the Boundary River to choose treasures, right? I advise you to be careful and pay attention to distinguishing. A sage-like old man approached and reminded him. Only then did Lin Sun understand that even on the bank of the Boundary River, there would be shoddy fakes being sold. It all depended on which idiot would be cheated. "Thank you for your advice," Lin Sun said. The old man twisted his beard and smiled. "My young friend, you look dignified and extraordinary. I think you must be a descendant of a great force. I have a lot of treasures here, which I obtained with great effort from the Boundary River. What do you think of this?" As he spoke, he turned over his palm, and a broken and mottled gray ancient jade appeared. It was branded with the breath of time and was ancient and heavy. "This jade is indeed very old. It is an ancient treasure." Lin Sun nodded. "Haha, little friend, you have good eyesight. Since we are fated to meet today, I will give this jade to you," said the old man as he handed the jade over to Lin Sun. Seeing this, Miss Lu suddenly smiled and quietly pulled Lin Sun's sleeve as she walked forward, saying, "This is an old liar. Don't be fooled by him." Lin Sun was surprised. "How so?" "Look." Miss Lu turned her head and gestured for Lin Sun to look. The old man smiled as he stopped a young man dressed in luxurious clothes and said, "Young friend, you look dignified and extraordinary. I presume you are—" "Fine." Even the words were the same. It was obviously a routine. Then, the old man took the opportunity to take out the damaged piece of ancient jade and gave it to the young man. The young man was overwhelmed by the favor and hurriedly declined. However, he was unable to resist the old man's enthusiasm and could only accept it in the end. Then, an interesting scene occurred. The young man seemed to feel embarrassed and wanted to pay a sum of spirit marrow as thanks. The old man looked like he was in a difficult position, but he still offered a price that was not difficult at all: 50,000 mid-grade spiritual essence. Lin Sun was speechless. This old man was really black-hearted. The broken jade was only old and had no value at all. How dare he black-hearted ask for 50,000 spirit marrow? Sure enough, the young man was stunned and then furious. Just as he was about to argue, he saw a group of ferocious practitioners surrounding him with sneers. They stared at the young man with unkind eyes and were full of threat. They were obviously the old man's accomplices. The old man sighed and said, "Little friend, I just reminded you, you have to be more careful." In the end, the young man took out all his belongings and bought the broken jade. He left with a face full of shame and indignation. Then, a magical scene appeared. The old man took out another piece of broken jade and began to swindle people. This old thing. Lin Sun witnessed all this and couldn't help but exclaim, "Isn't he worried about deceiving someone he can't afford to offend?" Miss Lu said with a smile, "This kind of old cheater has long become an expert. He specializes in scamming outsiders like you. Furthermore, before he scams them, he has already carefully identified them. If he encounters someone he can't afford to offend, he won't act. So, I was also regarded as a fat sheep by him just now?" Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. "Don't worry. If he realizes that you are not someone to be trifled with, the old liar will definitely admit defeat and apologize directly," Miss Lu said with a smile. "What a deep trick," Lin Sun sighed. "Yin-Yang Mother Bug, a great vicious being that is ranked in the top 10 of the ancient times. There's only a pair of them, so all those that pass by must not miss this opportunity." Not long after, another old man shouted out, and he carried a shabby pitch-black clay jar. Lin Sun came forward and saw that the jar was magical. It was full of obscure fluctuations and was very extraordinary for a long time. However, there were 2 inconspicuous silkworm cocoons in the jar. "Another old liar," Lin Sun muttered in his heart. The old man said with a smile, "Young man, I can tell what you are thinking. However, have you ever heard of a butterfly breaking out a cocoon? Yin and Yang motherworm looks like this when it's young. When it breaks out of the cocoon, it will definitely surprise you. Go and deceive others." Lin Sun was speechless. Did he look like a gullible person? Why did they come to him? The old man didn't look embarrassed at all. He said calmly, "Whether you believe it or not, the opportunity is in this jar. Whether you miss it or not depends on your fate." Lin Sun nodded and turned to leave. Not long after, the old man let out a scream and lamented, "Damn it! Why did the white jade butterfly cocoon that I painstakingly concocted die?" His words caused many practitioners nearby to curse. "Old liar! Didn't you say that it was the cocoon of Yin and Yang motherworm? Why did it become the white jade butterfly?" Then the old man fled dejectedly. "Did you do it?" Miss Lu looked at Lin Sun beside her. Lin Sun said with a smile, "Yin and Yang motherworm is comparable to Little Silver. It's one of the top 10 great beasts in the ancient times. I just released a trace of Little Silver's aura just now to test its authenticity." Miss Lu smiled. Little Silver was a genuine god-devouring bug. A wisp of its aura wasn't something that any living creature could withstand. They didn't stop and continued to walk forward. Green Flame City was very lively. Treasures from the Border River were being sold everywhere. There were real and fake treasures everywhere, and all of them had extremely frightening origins. There were all kinds of things, such as the remains of saints, ancient secret treasures, ancient great medicines, but most of them didn't live up to their name. However, there were some really good things among them, but they were ridiculously expensive. Not long after, Lin Sun and the others stopped in front of a stall. There was a rusty, mottled bronze mirror for sale. It was engraved with dense Taoist patterns, but most of the Taoist patterns were broken and incomplete. Even so, this item was still extraordinary, and it emanated a unique aura of Taoist Tao. According to the stall owner, this mirror was dug out from a dilapidated tomb in the Border River. After Lin Sun and Miss Lu sized it up, they both determined that it was an ancient sacred treasure but it had long been damaged to the extreme. It was like a useless treasure with no divinity, and its value was not great. Even so, it still attracted many cultivators to watch and ask for a price. "I want this bronze mirror," said a powerful alien race creature. He had the head of a bird and the body of a human. His eyes were like lightning, and he looked fierce. 8,000 superior grade, spiritual essence. "This treasure is mine." Another cultivator made a bid. Soon, the price of this bronze mirror rose to 80,000 superior grade spiritual essence, attracting more and more cultivators to watch. Another scam. They're deliberately finding people to raise the price. "Let's see which sucker gets scammed," Lin Sun muttered in his heart. He carefully observed and found some clues. Speaking of which, this was indeed a sacred treasure, but it was already ruined and not worth such an outrageous price. Suddenly, Lin Sun sensed something. There were some other strange treasures being sold in this stall. What caught Lin Sun's attention was a bronze fragment about half a foot long, and it was seriously corroded. Could it be a fragment of some treasure? Lin Sun carefully identified it and couldn't help but hold it in his hand to examine it. After that, he cursed in his heart. This stall owner is really dishonest. This thing is probably a fragment of a treasure left behind from the primeval times, but the traces of decay on it were created using a secret technique, and it's utterly impossible to notice if one doesn't look carefully. This was obviously to make people mistakenly think that they had found a good treasure, and they would have the secret joy and greed of picking up a bargain. Sure enough, when Lin Sun examined the item, the stall owner was slightly stunned and then pretended to be careless and said, "My little friend, do you fancy this treasure? It's not very rare. How about I sell it to you for 3,000 superior grade spiritual essence?" "Your price is too high. It's just a broken bronze fragment." Xiaohe curled her lips. Lin Sun also shook his head. "This price is indeed too high." As he said, he picked up a blood-stained, mottled stone and began to examine it. "My little friend, this stone is not simple either. It was unearthed from an incomplete, ancient, forbidden formation. Do you see the bloodstains on it? It's very likely to be divine blood." The stall owner said mysteriously, "If you want it, I will sell it to you for 3,000 superior grade spiritual essence, including the bronze fragment." Lin Sun continued to shake his head. "It's still too expensive." As he said, Lin Sun put down the stone and looked at some other items. After examining them one by one, he finally shook his head and was about to leave. "My little friend, wait. How about 3,000 superior grade spiritual essence? And you can take all these things." The stall owner hurriedly tried to persuade him to stay. After thinking for a long time, Lin Sun reluctantly agreed. Seeing this, the stall owner became suspicious. He was very clear about the value of these junk. Not to mention 3,000 superior grade spiritual essence. Even 1,000 was a ripoff. Out of caution, he carefully checked those items one by one again, and then completed the transaction with Lin Sun with a forthright face. "Brother Lin Sun, that guy is obviously cheating you. Why did you fall for it?" Xiaohe asked after walking for a short distance. She was very puzzled. "In my opinion, I should have picked up a bargain," Miss Lu said thoughtfully. Chapter 992. What on earth is it? Miss Lu couldn't help asking. She was also surprised because she had carefully identified the things Lin Sun bought just now. They were not rare and valuable. A formation stone stained with blood. Even the old monster of King Realm couldn't see through it. But in the eyes of a spiritual tattoo master, it's a treasure. Lin Sun transmitted his voice. Because it involves an extremely profound forbidden power, it seems inconspicuous, but in fact there are other mysteries inside. At the same time, the purple-robed young man hurried to the stall and cried, "Boss, where are the things I saw just now? I just sold them. What's wrong?" The stall owner was suspicious. "How can you sell them?" The purple-robed young man's face darkened, and he was a little exasperated. "Didn't I tell you not to sell them?" As he said, he grabbed the stall owner's lapel and gritted his teeth. "Tell me, who bought them? Where is that person now?" The stall owner was shocked and struggled. "Do you know where you are? How dare you hurt me?" I'm from heaven's pivot holy land. Do you think I dare? The purple-robed young man looked cold. His words made the stall owner's face change greatly. His attitude was completely deflated, and he told what had happened just now, truthfully. You untrustworthy bastard. You ruined my business. If I can't find that prohibition stone this time, I'll skin you alive. The purple-robed young man left a harsh word and turned away with a livid face. Prohibition stone? The stall owner was dumbfounded and lost his wits. Although he didn't know what it was bound to be an extraordinary treasure since the successor of heaven's pivot holy land was so anxious and concerned about it. Damn it, I've been hunting wild geese all day long, but today I'm blinded by them. The stall owner beat his chest and stamped his feet. He was both upset and frustrated, and his heart was bleeding. The purple-robed young man searched hard in the vast sea of people, but it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. In the end, he failed to find the buyer described by the stall owner. Damn it, I was only a step away, yet I actually missed such an enormous fortuitous encounter. The purple-robed young man was so angry that he almost went crazy. Finally, he sighed, I have to report to Marshal Uncle first. Canny Treasure Building. It was one of the most famous firms in Jade Flame City. When they arrived, Lin Sun's eyes lit up. This building was completely constructed from a type of profound mound amethyst, and it was 3 kilometers tall. As it stood there, it pierced into the clouds, and its entire body seethed with violet light. It was crystalline, translucent, and extremely lofty. Strings of azure-colored glass palace lanterns hung beneath the eaves of the pavilion, and they emanated divine radiance that was reflected on the walls. They complemented the violet glow of the lanterns, and it was gorgeous to the point of being illusory. Lin Sun was a little surprised. With his current eyesight, he could see that the whole building was covered with dense spiritual tattoo formations, which echoed with each other and formed a defensive formation comparable to the King Forbidden Formation, which was extremely marvelous. This formation wasn't all that terrifying. The key was that the amount of spiritual marrow required to operate this formation was an astronomical figure. From this, one could tell how wealthy the owner of this heavenly tower was. After entering, the interior of the building was completely different. It was extremely spacious, and the ground and walls were all covered with light golden-colored glass jades, which were polished to the point of being as smooth as mirrors. Under the illumination of the gilded bronze lanterns, the building looked extremely majestic. I'm going in to look for someone to handle some personal matters. Why don't you wait here with Xiao He for a while? Miss Lu said. All right, Lin Sun nodded. Miss Lu immediately called for an attendant, and after a short conversation, she was guided into the depths of the building. Lin Sun could guess that Miss Lu was probably preparing for her return to the sect. Since he had nothing to do, he and Xiao He began to browse around the heavenly tower. This building was indeed extraordinary. It sold all kinds of treasures, rare treasures, spiritual herbs, spiritual materials, a dazzling lineup. As far as the eye could see, there was a dense and dazzling glow of treasures everywhere, dazzling to the eyes. Even someone like Lin Sun, who was used to seeing all kinds of treasures, couldn't help but feel surprised. This heavenly tower truly lived up to its name. All of its treasures were of the highest quality, and none of them were ordinary. For example, one of the treasures, the Netherlight Cloud Armor, was made from a type of netherworld chi found in a bottomless abyss, combined with hundreds of spiritual materials. A complicated spiritual formation was laid on top of the armor, giving it the ability to be impervious to fire and water, as well as to avoid dust and calm one's mind. Another example was a pair of boots. Although they looked simple, they were made from the fur of a golden-eyed black sparrow, which was extremely rare and precious. However, they were extremely expensive, and ordinary cultivators couldn't afford them. Unknowingly, they had arrived at the area for exchanging treasures. Lin Sun's heart skipped a beat. He went through the items in his storage ring, planning to exchange all the treasures that he couldn't use for spiritual marrow. However, right at this moment, he suddenly heard a woman's voice coming from not far away. Hey, isn't this Xiao He? How long has it been since we last met? Why are you here instead of begging on the streets? Don't tell me you can't live any longer, so you're begging me for some food?" Her words were sarcastic and harsh, which made Xiao He, who was standing next to him, stiffen. A look of anger emerged on her pretty face. Lin Sun turned around and saw a young girl dressed in luxurious clothes walking towards him from afar. She was only 14 or 15 years old, but she had a cold and arrogant attitude. Her eyebrows were raised high, and her lips were slightly pursed. She had a gorgeous appearance, but at this moment, there was an undisguised sneer and ridicule on her face. When she walked over, some of the nearby attendants saluted and said, "Greetings, Miss Pei." Pei Wen had an arrogant look on her face. She raised her chin and ignored the attendants' greetings, then went straight to Xiao He's side. TSK, look at you, still in such dire straits. Didn't you swear that you'd rather die than beg for food? But now, I can see that you're no different from the time you begged for food last year." She squinted at Xiao He and sized her up from head to toe. Her tone was full of sarcasm and disdain. "Tell me, what are you doing here at the Heavenly Tower?" "Pei Wen, I don't want to argue with you about what happened in the past. To each his own. You have your way of living, and I have mine. Why do you have to ridicule me as soon as we meet?" Xiao He's pretty face turned red, and she clenched her fists unconsciously. Obviously, she and Pei Wen were old acquaintances. Pei Wen giggled and said, "I don't like you. So what's wrong with ridiculing you? You and I are both from poor families. But I'm lucky to have met the benefactor of my life and changed my fate. But you? Haha, you're so pitiful. Don't go too far." Xiao He was furious. "Don't forget how you changed your fate." Pei Wen sneered. "The process is not important. The result is important. Look, I'm respected wherever I go, but you are still a beggar who can't even show your face." At this point, she suddenly frowned and said coldly to the attendants in the distance, "Who allowed you to let this beggar in? This is the Tianyi Pavilion, not a place where anyone can come and go as they please." The attendants kept quiet out of fear. "What are you waiting for? Throw her out now." Pei Wen scolded. This was an undisguised blow and humiliation. "You've gone too far." Xiao He was so angry that her body was trembling. She almost bit her lip. At this moment, Lin Sun couldn't stand it anymore. He had a rough idea of what was going on. Although he didn't know the exact reason, it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that Xiao He was being bullied right under his nose. Chapter 993. What Lin Sun couldn't tolerate the most was that this girl named Pei Wen had been acting like she didn't care about anyone else. Any normal person could tell that Xiao He was here with him, but this Pei Wen had humiliated and attacked Xiao He right in front of him. Who could tolerate this? "Miss, please leave the Heavenly Tower. This is not a place for someone of your status." The attendants walked over and looked at Xiao He coldly. If Xiao He dared to disobey them, they would take action immediately. The atmosphere seemed to have frozen. Xiao He was so angry that her almond-shaped eyes were wide open. Her face was flushed and her limbs were trembling. She really didn't expect such a thing to happen. "Of course," Pei Wen said with a smile. "If you kneel down and beg me now, I might forgive you for what you did in the past. Don't even think about it." Xiao He shouted angrily. "Throw her out." Pei Wen's expression turned cold as she gave the order. "Enough." As Lin Sun spoke, a touch of coldness appeared between his eyebrows, and an invisible momentum also spread out. Pei Wen's expression changed slightly, but she immediately sneered. "Young master, this is the Heavenly Tower. Are you planning to cause trouble here? If you know what's good for you, you'd better leave, lest you get yourself into trouble." At the end of her words, a hint of arrogance appeared on her lips. Although Lin Sun's aura had frightened her, she was confident that with the reputation of the Heavenly Tower, she would be able to stop him from acting recklessly. However, she was wrong this time. Lin Sun had tolerated her because he didn't want to get into trouble. However, he had already made his stance clear. If the other party still didn't know what was good for them, he would be courting death. Just as Pei Wen finished her words, Lin Sun raised his hand and slapped hard on Pei Wen's gorgeous face that was filled with pride and disdain. Slap! The slap was loud and clear. He didn't show any mercy to the fairer sex. Pei Wen let out a blood-curdling scream as she was sent flying. With a plop, she fell over 30 meters away. Her hair was disheveled and blood was gushing out from her mouth and nose. Half of her face was red and swollen. She looked miserable. The nearby attendants turned pale with fright. They immediately stepped forward and shouted, "Stop! Do you know where you are? How dare you behave so atrociously here?" Scram! Lin Sun's eyes were like lightning. He didn't even turn his head. His shout exploded like thunder, making those attendants' heads buzz. They fell to the ground in disorder, screaming incessantly. Some of them even bled from their 7 orifices and fainted. The scene was instantly in chaos, and all hell broke loose. Some of the shouja who were shopping in the distance couldn't help but feel shocked when they saw this. The Heavenly Tower's background was extremely profound, and it was known as the #1 trading company in Jade Flame City. In the past, who dared to cause trouble here? You dare to hit me? You're dead. None of you will be able to leave this place alive today. Peiwen screamed from afar. Her face was filled with rage, and her voice was filled with resentment. One had to admit that the Heavenly Tower did have a solid foundation. In just a blink of an eye, a group of elite and formidable cultivators had rushed into the building. "Young Miss Pei, what happened?" The guard in the lead asked in a deep voice. "Are you blind? Can't you see that someone is causing trouble? Go, capture them all. Don't let any of them escape." Peiwen screamed hysterically. She was on the verge of going crazy. "Here!" The guards fixed their eyes on Lin Sun and Xiao He. Their expressions were cold and murderous. "Friend, are you going to surrender? Or do you want us to make a move? This is the Heavenly Tower. Even if you're at the reincarnation developing realm, you won't be able to leave after causing trouble here." The guard in the lead said coldly. He could tell Lin Sun's cultivation at first glance, so he didn't make a move immediately. Causing trouble? Lin Sun's black eyes turned even colder. "I don't have time to waste with you. Get out of my way if you don't want to die." As he spoke, he took a step forward and appeared in front of Peiwen. His hand moved like lightning, and he grabbed Peiwen's neck, lifting her up like a chicken. His movement was so fast that the guards couldn't react in time. They only saw a blur before Peiwen was under his control. Hiss! The guests who were watching from afar gasped. They realized that Lin Sun was a ruthless man despite his young age. He was not afraid of the Heavenly Tower's threat at all. Who was this guy? This person was really daring. Peiwen was stunned for a moment. Then she became furious. She struggled violently and screamed, "You won't be able to live even if you kill me." Slap! Lin Sun swung his hand and slapped her across the face, sending her flying away. Her vision darkened, and she almost fainted. She looked miserable at the moment. Tears and mucus flowed down her face, and her face was red and swollen like a pig's head. She didn't look proud or conceited at all. "Go!" At the same time, the guards were completely enraged. They thought Lin Sun didn't know what was good for him and dared to cause trouble in the Heavenly Tower. He was so arrogant that he didn't know what was good for him. These guards were indeed the elites of the Heavenly Tower. They were experienced in battles, and their leader was a reincarnation developing realm cultivator who had experienced many battles. In front of this kind of power, any ordinary cultivator would be wary of it. Unfortunately, Lin Sun was not an ordinary cultivator. In the past, countless geniuses had died in his hands. Not long ago, he had even trapped and killed old freak Black Rhino, a king realm cultivator. Under such circumstances, why would he be afraid of the Heavenly Tower? As for the group of guards in front of him, they might be a great deterrent to ordinary cultivators. But in Lin Sun's eyes, they were nothing but a bunch of chickens and dogs. "I've given you a chance, but you don't know how to cherish it. Since that's the case, you'll have to pay the price." As soon as the cold and indifferent voice was heard, Lin Sun disappeared from where he was standing. Bang! In the next moment, the leader of the guards, who was at the reincarnation developing realm, fell to his knees on the ground as if he had been struck by lightning, as if his knees had been shattered. The guests in the distance were shocked and in disbelief. Wasn't this too straightforward? Bang, bang, bang. At the same time, Lin Sun's figure flickered. Wherever he went, those guards, who were considered elites in the eyes of the outsiders, were suppressed one by one before they could even struggle. They fell to the ground in disorder. For a moment, miserable screams and wails lingered in the air, echoing in the heavenly tower's main hall. It was a hair-raising scene. The guests in the distance were dumbfounded. From the moment Lin Sun made his move to the moment it ended, only a few breaths had passed, and those guards were all suppressed like a whirlwind. The scene was so shocking that no one could react in time. As for Lin Sun, he looked calm and collected, as if he had just done something trivial, which made the guests' hearts tremble. Lin Sun glanced around with his dark eyes and said in a cold tone, "You bullied the little girl beside me, and now you're accusing me of causing trouble. How overbearing. Fine, I'll cause trouble today. If you can't satisfy me today, I don't mind tearing this place down." In an instant, the atmosphere in the hall was deathly silent, almost suffocating. Tearing down the heavenly tower? Whether it was Pei One, the guards, or the guests, their expressions changed drastically. They could hardly believe their ears. It was unimaginable that such words would come from the mouth of a young man at the reincarnation developing realm. Was he fearless because he was ignorant, or did he have the confidence to do so? I'd like to see where this bastard came from. How dare he cause trouble in my heavenly tower? Right at this moment, a cold voice was heard. Accompanied by the voice, two old men surrounded a red-robed youth like a myriad of stars surrounding the moon as they walked in. "Young master, help! Save Pei Xiaowen." Upon seeing the red-robed young man, Pei One, whose face was swollen like a pig's head, mustered up the strength to cry out. At the same time, the expressions of some guests in the distance changed slightly as they recognized the newcomers. The two old men had snow-white hair and beards. Their expressions were cold and calm. They were the two half-step to king realm elders of the heavenly tower. One was called Wei Tianxing, and the other was Wu Yuanshu. They had a great reputation in Jade Flame City. Along with their arrival, all the chaotic and clamorous noises disappeared without a trace with just a sweep of their eyes. The faces of the guards and attendants revealed expressions of reverence, and they kept quiet out of fear. The red-robed young man who led the group was the eldest son of the Heavenly Tower's master. His name was Gao Yunkuan. He was tall and slender, and his eyes were cold and sharp. Every move he made was filled with a sense of arrogance and aloofness. In Jade Flame City, Gao Yunkuan was famous for being domineering. He was arrogant, domineering, vengeful, and merciless. Many cultivators would turn pale at the mention of him. "Young master," as if he had found his savior, Pei One threw herself on her knees before Gao Yunkuan's feet while crying. She wore a pitiful expression as if she had suffered all kinds of grievances. "Who beat you up like this?" Gao Yunkuan furrowed his brows. Pei Wen's hair was disheveled. Her face was swollen, and tears were streaming down her face. "It's him. Not only did he commit murder, he even said that he would tear down our heavenly tower. He deserves to be hacked into pieces and burned to ashes." Pei Wen glared at Lin Sun in the distance and spoke through clenched teeth. He really doesn't know what's good for him." Elder Wei Tianxing sneered. "No matter what the reason is, anyone who dares to cause trouble here will be punished with death." Elder is right. It's not a big deal for me to be humiliated, but if the Heavenly Tower's reputation is tarnished, it will be a serious matter. If we don't punish them, how can the Heavenly Tower maintain its foothold in Jade Flame City? Pei Wen's eyes were filled with hatred. He pointed at Xiao He and said, "And this little girl, she deserves to die 1,000 deaths. She brought that guy here to cause trouble. She must be punished severely." Xiao He was no longer angry. She knew that the situation before her was not a problem for Lin Sun. However, she still felt guilty, thinking that it was because of her that Lin Sun was involved in this mess. "All right, I'll leave this little girl to you." Another elder, Wu Yuanshu, nodded his head coldly. The guests in the distance felt a chill in their hearts. They realized that the young man and the little girl were going to face a great calamity, and that they would not be able to leave this place today. Right at this moment, Lin Sun, who had witnessed everything, spoke. "Are you done? If you are, you could be on your way." Chapter 994. As soon as he finished speaking, Pei-wen laughed. She laughed out of anger. How dare this guy speak such arrogant words at a time like this? She couldn't help but scream, "Ignorant fool, it's time for us to send you to hell." Swoosh. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure suddenly disappeared. Wei Tianxing and Wu Yuanchu's expressions changed. They reacted quickly and protected Gao Yunkuan in front of them. Crack! As soon as they did that, they heard the sound of bones breaking. It was extremely ear-piercing in the silent atmosphere. Then, they saw Pei-wen's neck was broken before she could finish her words. Her red and swollen face was still filled with resentment and disdain. Pei-wen's vision turned black as a heart-wrenching pain surged through her body like a tidal wave. She saw Lin Sun, who was not far away, looking at her with an indifferent expression. His cold, black eyes were filled with ruthlessness and coldness. Bang! Then, her head tilted to one side and her body fell to the ground. She was no longer breathing. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. From Wei Tianxing and Wu Yuanchu protecting Gao Yunkuan to Lin Sun killing Pei-wen, it happened almost at the same time. It was unbelievably fast, so fast that no one expected Lin Sun to attack brazenly under such circumstances. He killed Pei-wen with a single strike without any fear. That kind of direct and efficient method, cold and domineering attitude, caught everyone off guard. They were stunned. This was the Heavenly Tower. How dare that young man kill someone in front of two half-step King Realm experts? You're courting death. Gao Yunkuan was enraged. His face was filled with killing intent. Pei-wen was my most beloved maidservant. How dare you kill her in front of me? You're really audacious. His cold voice rumbled through the hall, making everyone's heart tremble. Maidservant? Lin Sun was startled. He then sneered. A maidservant dares to be so domineering and arrogant. Like servant, like master. Judging from your appearance, I'm afraid you're not a good person. Young master, there's no need to say any more. This old man will take care of this vile spawn. Wu Yuanchu stepped out, the aura around him rising steadily. In an instant, the imposing aura of a half-step King Realm expert was like a gale that covered the heavens and the earth and filled every single inch of air within this hall. Thump, 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 thump. The guards and attendants were unable to endure the pressure and directly fell limply to the ground. The guests who were watching from afar also cried out in alarm. They were also shocked by this terrifying aura, and their faces turned pale. Little fellow, I'll give you a chance. Choose a way to die. Wu Yuanchu's hair and beard fluttered, and he revealed the arrogant, imposing aura of a half-step King Realm expert. Everyone's heart trembled. However, upon hearing this, Xiao He suddenly revealed a pitiful expression. This old fellow probably didn't know that the number of half-step kings who had died in Brother Lin's hands was uncountable. Lin Sun also smiled, revealing a mouthful of white and neat teeth. Old dog, just because of this sentence, you can go on your way too. Whoosh! He strode out and charged forward. This surprised everyone. That's a half-step King Realm expert. Yet this fellow isn't afraid in the slightest and even directly charged forward. Is he tired of living? You're like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Wu Yuanchu was disdainful as well. His entire body surged with jet black light, and he moved like a bolt of lightning as he stretched out his palm and slapped it towards Lin Sun, who was charging at him. Bang! The two of them collided and erupted with dazzling divine radiance that swept towards the surroundings. At the same time, a shrill cry resounded. When everyone thought that Lin Sun had suffered a calamity, they noticed to their astonishment that the half-step King Realm expert, with a terrifying, imposing aura, Wu Yuanchu, was still in midair, yet his body seemed to have been shackled and suppressed to the point of being unable to move. After that, his right arm that he stretched out exploded into pieces with a bang. Subsequently, his chest collapsed as well, and a bloody hole the size of a bowl appeared there. In the end, amidst shrill cries of terror, rage, and terror, Wu Yuanchu's entire body exploded into a rain of blood that sprayed through the sky. The rain of blood shot out violently and dyed the sky in ground red, and it was like rainwater that slapped onto the guards and attendants, causing it to be scarlet red and pungent to the nose. Hiss! Everyone present gasped, as if they had been struck by lightning. They felt a chill run down their spines, and their souls almost left their bodies. In just a split second, that young man did not die, but Wu Yuanshu, the elder of the Heavenly Tower, was directly killed. He was so dead that his body could not even be found, and he had turned into a pile of flesh and blood. This was too terrifying. This was a half-step King Realm expert who was extremely famous in the Green Flame City. All these years, he had helped the Heavenly Tower solve countless troubles. But now, before he could even touch the corner of his opponent's clothes, he had exploded and died. Who could believe this? In fact, Wu Yuanshu's death was not strange at all. In his eyes, Lin Sun was only a young man at the reincarnation development realm, and he looked unfamiliar. Subconsciously, he had looked down on and neglected Lin Sun. However, even at the moment of his death, he would never have thought that he would have the misfortune of running into a peerless figure comparable to a demon. With Lin Sun's current cultivation, he could withstand the attacks of the 6 half-step King Realm experts of the Sacred Flame sect without the help of the Broken Blade. Under such circumstances, how could Wu Yuanshu have a chance to survive? Gao Yunkuan's pupils constricted, and his expression changed drastically. Wei Tianxing's body trembled, and he almost cried out. He could no longer maintain his composure. He did not dare to think that if he had attacked just now, would he have been killed with a single punch? He was completely flustered, realizing that he had kicked an iron plate this time. The others in the hall had long been scared out of their wits. They were like clay puppets, almost suffocating. The visual impact of watching a half-step King Realm expert being killed with their own eyes was not ordinary. What's going on? Right amidst this deathly silence, a dignified shout resounded. Accompanying the figure was a middle-aged man in a green robe. His hair was as black as ink, and his eyes were like that of a tiger's. His shoulders were broad, and he had a dignified aura. Beside him was a woman. It was Miss Lu. When she saw the scene in the hall, she was slightly startled. Father. When he saw the middle-aged man in a green robe, Gao Yunkuan seemed to have grasped the last straw. He completely regained his senses and became spirited. At the same time, Wei Tianxing and the guards present bowed and addressed him as clan leader. This person was the boss behind the Heavenly Tower, the clan leader of the Gao clan, Gao Tianyi. He was a big shot in Jade Flame City who had the ability to overturn the world. Tell me, what's going on? Gao Tianyi frowned. When he saw the flesh and blood all over the ground, his eyelids twitched and his face darkened. This person killed my maidservant first, and then Elder Wu Yuanshu was brutally killed by him. Gao Yunkuan's eyes were cold and awe-inspiring as he stared at Lin Sun. If you hadn't arrived in time, I'm afraid this bastard would have killed me as well. Gao Tianyi's eyes emitted a cold light as he locked his gaze on Lin Sun. He was obviously angry. Father, you've seen everything. This bastard is rampant and cruel. If we don't kill him, how can the Heavenly Tower maintain its foothold in the city? Gao Yunkuan shouted. But right at this moment, Miss Lu said indifferently, Interesting. My friend has just arrived at the Heavenly Tower, yet he has already caused such a big commotion. He was even labeled as savage and cruel. Is this the way you treat your guests? Friend? Gao Tianyi was stunned. His pupils dilated in disbelief. Miss, what do you mean by this? Am I lying? Gao Yunkuan was sullen. If he hadn't seen Miss Lu walking with his father, he would have flown into a rage. Shut up. To everyone's surprise, Gao Tianyi suddenly shouted. He looked at Gao Yunkuan with a gloomy and terrifying expression, which was very unusual. Gao Yunkuan's body stiffened. He almost couldn't believe what he had just heard. This was his father. How could he behave like this? For a moment, he was puzzled and aggrieved. Then, something even more unbelievable happened. His father, the patriarch of the Gao clan and the controller of the Heavenly Tower, put on an ashamed and apologetic smile and said to Lin Sun, So you're Miss Li's friend. I'm really sorry. No matter who was right or wrong, I hereby apologize to you, young master. As he spoke, he bowed and cupped his hands in front of his chest. In an instant, the atmosphere in the hall became deathly silent, and everyone was flabbergasted. Everything that happened before their eyes was simply like a dream, and it seemed so absurd and unreal. Who would dare believe that a great figure like Gao Tianyi, who possessed absolute power in Jade Flame City, hadn't even asked for the reason before directly apologizing to the murderer? This was too abnormal. At this moment, even the stupidest person realized that it must be Miss Lu who made Gao Tianyi react like this. But who on earth was she? How could a mere sentence make Gao Tianyi react in such a subservient manner? Not only them, but even Lin Sun was surprised. He realized that Miss Li's identity seemed to be more complicated than he had imagined. "Father, your..." Gao Yunkuan was completely confused and cried out involuntarily. "Wei Tianxing, take this unfilial son away. If he dares to talk nonsense again, cripple him directly," Gao Tianyi said coldly, looking extremely cold. In fact, he was extremely resentful. Didn't this unfilial son see the situation clearly at this critical moment? "Wait, the matter hasn't been resolved yet, and you want to leave?" Miss Li's words made Gao Tianyi stiffen all over. A dignified person like him broke out in a cold sweat at this moment. He smiled apologetically and said, "Miss Li's words are reasonable. This unfilial son dared to offend your friend. It's simply disgraceful." At the end of his words, he suddenly turned around and shouted sternly, "Unfilial son, hurry up and kneel." Gao Yunkuan was completely dumbfounded. He felt as if he wasn't his own son. Bang! Wei Tianxing, who was behind Gao Yunkuan, had long sensed the subtle changes in the situation.